Welcome to the Science of Happiness Practices for a Joyful Life, brought to you by Mindful Literary. In a world that constantly seeks happiness, this audiobook is your guide to uncovering the true essence of joy and well being. Happiness isn't just a fleeting emotion, it's a science backed state of being that can be cultivated through intentional practices and mindful living. Throughout this audiobook, we will embark on a journey to understand what happiness truly means and how we can integrate joy into our daily lives. We'll explore the powerful chemicals in our brain that create happiness, the role of gratitude, and the importance of mindfulness. We'll dive into the impact of relationships, the pursuit of purpose, and the art of letting go. Each chapter is designed to provide you with practical tools and insights to enhance your well being. Let's begin this transformative journey together, discovering the practices that can lead to a more joyful and fulfilling life. Chapter 1: The Quest for Happiness, Defining Happiness. As I sit here, wrapped in the soft embrace of nostalgia, I find myself wondering, what does happiness truly mean? For years, I chased it like a mirage in the desert, only to discover that it often slipped through my fingers just as I thought I'd grasped it. I remember a sunny afternoon in my childhood when I had climbed to the highest branch of an oak tree in my backyard, heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. I felt invincible up there, sprawled out in the leaves, cradled by the sun's golden rays. In that moment, I believed happiness was this wild, uncontainable joy fueled by adventure. Yet, waiting for me on the other side of that exuberance was a deep, crushing loneliness that crept in as I descended back to reality. Reflecting on my journey, it's clear that happiness is not a constant state. It's made up of fleeting moments, woven together by our personal experiences, expectations, and the choices we make. I often think about conversations with Sarah, my lifelong friend. Just last week, she shared how her recent promotion at work filled her with purpose, yet left her feeling isolated. I thought success would bring me happiness, she confessed, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Instead, I feel this weight of expectation. It's like the more I achieve, the less time I have for the things that truly matter. In that moment, I realized how subjective happiness can be. Hers fluctuated with external circumstances, proving that what makes one person happy might just amplify another's despair. And then there's Tom, my self proclaimed happiness guru, who always seems to find joy in the simplest of things. I remember the late night chats over coffee, where he would tell me stories of his travels, how he found wonder watching street performers in a bustling city or in the quiet of a sunrise on a deserted beach. Happiness is choosing to see the beauty around you, he said one evening, his voice warm and inviting. Yet the more I listened, the more I questioned my own understanding of joy. Could it really be that simple? Or was his perspective just another lens added to the kaleidoscope of my experience? As I gathered my thoughts together, I stumbled upon contrasting emotions, moments of sheer bliss painted against shades of sorrow. I could park in that oak tree again, savor the thrill of climbing, but what about the times I found myself in a quiet room, contemplating the struggles of my mind? Those days when joy felt like a distant echo, no matter how much I tried to summon it, it doesn't escape me how complex it all is. Perhaps that's the crux of it, a continuous interplay between joy and despair, like the pendulum swinging between hope and fear. It's the recognition of our unique experiences that sheds light on the truth. Happiness is deeply personal, a mosaic crafted from our interactions, narratives, and the contrasts that shape us. Yet as I sit here reflecting, I can't help but feel a pang of anxiety. What if my quest for happiness leads me to a road paved with unmet expectations? What if, in the end, I realize I've been chasing an illusion? The thought creeps in like an uninvited guest, stirring emotions I thought I'd neatly tucked away. Here I am, weaving together these anecdotes, these pieces of my life, yet there's still an undercurrent of uncertainty throbbing beneath it all. How do we navigate our individual definitions of happiness? Perhaps I need to reconcile these narratives, Sarah's pursuit, Tom's simplicity, and find a middle ground that resonates within me. And yet a sense of urgency twitches at me, the need to define happiness before the opportunity slips away. The myth of the perfect life every day. I scroll through my social media feeds, a parade of perfect lives, bright beach vacations, lavish dinners, and heartwarming family moments. And there I am, sipping cold coffee at my cluttered kitchen table, trying to figure out why my laundry basket looks like it's auditioning for a role in a disaster movie. Monica, my college friend, posts photos of her glamorous corporate events, her smile radiant against the backdrop of sparkling city lights. On the surface, it appears she has it all: the dream job, the perfect wardrobe, and an enviable social calendar. Yet beneath that glitzy veneer, I know she's battling crippling anxiety and pressures that threaten to swallow her whole. Then there's John, gallivanting around the globe like some modern day nomad. His Instagram showcases breathtaking sunrises in Bali, quaint cafes in Paris, and mind blowing hikes in the Andes. The world is his oyster, or so it seems. But what he doesn't post is the loneliness that creeps in between his adventures. The nights spent in hotel rooms where the quiet feels deafening, or the family gatherings he misses back home. There's a void that doesn't come with geotags or double taps, a reality that often escapes the glamorous beams of filters. And there I was, telling my friend Lisa about my day, how I felt unworthy amidst the curated perfection. I could see the flicker in her eyes, a mix of understanding and discomfort. "Everyone else has it together," she said, her voice trailing off, loaded with the weight of our shared insecurities. Perhaps we were both caught in a haze of comparison, but I knew we needed to break free. These stories are not mere snippets of someone's highlight reel. They are illustrations of the perpetual myth of the perfect life, one that thrives on social media yet implodes with authenticity. It's high time we embraced our imperfect selves, the messiness of life, and celebrated authenticity over aesthetics. As I guide Lisa through this journey, I realize we may not be perfect, but we aren't alone either, and that itself is liberating. While I struggle with these thoughts, I reflect on my own imperfections, the tightrope I walk of flaws. Yes, I've got a handful of them. The late night tears over unanswered emails, the stress induced pizza orders, and the anxiety about whether I'll ever figure out what I really want to be when I grow up. But in those spontaneous moments, when I laugh a little too loudly or dance like no one's watching in my living room, I find truth. Is it not these moments that truly define us? My heart swells with warmth, knowing that embracing the real, raw, and often messy parts of life creates the threads of connection as we support each other through our struggles. As I scroll through my painfully curated feed again, I feel the tension build within me. I want, no need, to challenge the myth that surrounds us, the subtle nudges of social media that whisper we are not enough unless we look like the perfect version of ourselves. The truth is, every single one of us faces our own battles, deliberately hidden behind carefully placed filters and faux smiles. And as I confront these realities, there's an urgency in my voice as I encourage Lisa and others like her to step into the light of their authenticity, unmasking not only who they are, but who they can be, imperfectly perfect just as they are. What makes us truly happy? Happiness. It's a word we toss around casually, but what does it really mean? I often find myself pondering this, especially during quiet moments when I'm sipping tea, watching the world rush by outside my window. These musings led me to look beyond superficial definitions of happiness and dig deeper into the roots of what genuinely brings joy to our lives. In my quest, I stumbled upon the insightful work of psychologist Dr. Amy, who suggests that true happiness isn't anchored in milestones or material successes, but rather in our everyday experiences and relationships. One chilly evening, while catching up with my friend Jenna over coffee, I shared Dr. Amy's findings. Her laughter filled the cafe, warm and inviting, as she recounted her own journey with happiness. "You know," she said, "I spent years chasing promotions and dreams that never quite filled me up. Then came the moment when I discovered the joy of simple things, like Saturday mornings spent cooking pancakes with my kids." Jenna's story made me reflect on my own life, realizing that moments spent laughing with friends, gazing at a sunset, or even sitting quietly in my garden often left me more fulfilled than my achievements ever did. This shared narrative sparked my determination to uncover more stories of happiness, grounded in the mundane rather than the extraordinary. As I connected with various friends, each story wove a tapestry of joy rooted in presence and connection. Jamie, for instance, talked about how he found his happiest moments while volunteering at a local shelter. The smiles and gratitude he received from those he helped ignited a sense of purpose that no corporate title ever could offer. In those simple interactions, Jamie explained, I felt more alive than I had in years. It's like the universe was whispering, this is the good stuff. Each conversation painted a color on the canvas of happiness, revealing how fulfillment often breathes life into the simplest of moments. Then there was Maya, who had once equated happiness with her career success. After a challenging few years, she took a step back and reassessed her priorities. I realized that I was merely surviving instead of truly living, she shared, her eyes glistening with the wisdom she had gained. So, I started nurturing the little things, like my morning ritual of yoga in the garden, or the weekly movie night with my family. Those become my treasures. It was poignant to see how gradually shifting focus from larger aspirations to small yet significant daily rituals transformed not only Maya's mood but her entire outlook on life. As I compiled these heartfelt experiences and scientific insights, a pattern began to emerge. Genuine happiness thrives on relationships, mindfulness, and simplicity. In a world that constantly screams for more success, more wealth, more everything, it's easy to forget that joy often resides where we least expect it. Reflecting on my own life, I realized that my happiest memories were filled not with the rush of accolades, but the soft warmth of shared laughter and quiet moments of gratitude. It's in those fleeting seconds of connection where true contentment lurks, waiting to be acknowledged. But here's where I felt the tension building. Each friend's story urged me to confront my own beliefs about happiness and success. Was I, too, trapped in the chase for bigger and better instead of cherishing the small and beautiful? My apprehension grew, tempting me to retreat into my comfort zone, but I knew the only way to find answers was to leap into the exploration of my own heart. Each anecdote crystallized the notion that happiness can often be found right under our noses, yet our perception blinds us to it. What if, in our relentless pursuit of greatness, we were unwittingly overlooking the essence of what made life truly worth living? By the end of our conversations, I felt a palpable shift in my perspective. I craved to embrace more of those radiant little moments that Laura, Jamie, and Maya so wonderfully articulated. I began to yearn for a softer approach to life, to prioritize presence over productivity and gratitude over achievement. But could I truly unravel years of conditioning that equated success with happiness? The thought lingered like the last sip of coffee, rich and dark. An undeniable challenge lay before me, yet the prospect sparked excitement. Perhaps the real adventure in this pursuit wasn't simply in finding out what makes us happy, but in living through the journey of discovery itself. Chapter 2: The Science Behind Joy, the Brain's Happiness Chemicals. As I leaned over the microscope, peering into the unassuming slide, I couldn't help but marvel at how something so tiny could wield such power over us. This was no ordinary observation. I was deep into a scientific exploration of the brain's happiness chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. I felt like a magician unveiling the secrets of joy. Just last week, I was patching up the after effects of a grueling gym session when Claire, my ever-enthusiastic lab partner, burst in. "Did you know that exercising releases endorphins?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "It's like nature's instant happiness boost." "Really?" I replied, wiping the sweat off my brow and recalling the rush I felt after the spin class. It was extraordinary how movement could permeate my life with joy, shaking up the stress of the week and leaving me grinning like a Cheshire cat. Is that why I felt so euphoric? That must have been the endorphins kicking in. I couldn't help but picture my neurons dancing like partygoers on a Saturday night, as if my brain was hosting a constant celebration the moment I hit that treadmill. "Exactly," Claire chirped, pulling out her notes, her enthusiasm radiating through the air like a warm summer breeze. Endorphins interact with the receptors in your brain that reduce your perception of pain, which in turn can elevate your mood. When you're training hard, your body thinks it's under siege, so it releases endorphins to help you power through. I felt an exhilarating chill running down my spine. Here I was, a living experiment. My fitness journey was littered with the vestiges of these chemicals, yet I had never envisioned them as anything other than biological means to an end. As we jotted down notes, the conversation drifted towards serotonin, often dubbed the feel-good chemical. Did you know, Claire said, leaning forward with a conspiratorial tone, that spending time outdoors and even simply being social can enhance your serotonin levels? I nodded, recalling my hikes with friends, the laughter echoing amid the rustling leaves. Those moments felt electric, crackling with connection and happiness. They painted joy in vivid colors against the dreary canvas of everyday life. It was, admittedly, easy to lose sight of how interconnected our activities were with these internal processes. But then Claire's voice turned serious, drawing my attention back to her. You know, there's more to it. Oxytocin is the magic chemical behind social bonding. It's released during moments of intimacy, and not just romantic. Think hugs, handshakes, the warmth of a shared smile. I could practically feel the weight of her words hang in the air. In a world brimming with digital interactions, it was refreshing, dare I say necessary, to be reminded of the deep-rooted need for genuine human connection. So, you're telling me my joy hinges on these chemicals, and I could choose to boost their levels with simple, everyday actions? I mused, a smile creeping onto my face. The notion was liberating yet daunting. How could I harness these chemicals and disrupt the cycle of stress and anxiety? It felt like a treasure map, filled with possibilities but intricate, each twist and turn symbolizing a small choice that echoed through my brain. Our discussion unfolded like those twists: the power of laughter with friends, the serene tranquility of mindfulness during meditation, and even the way a kind word can uplift spirits. Yet, in the midst of these discoveries, a looming thought nudged at the back of my mind. What about those days when joy felt elusive, when the weight of the world pressed against my chest like an unyielding brick? I could almost hear the ominous silence that often punctuated those moments, taunting me with despair. But Claire, I said, hesitation thickening my voice, what if we struggle to summon these chemicals when we need them most? What if, in those dark times, our brains forget the path to happiness? At that moment, her features softened. That's where knowledge comes into play. Understanding these processes is empowering. It allows us to embark on small journeys, breaking down the barriers that keep us from seeking joy. Though her words offered solace, an unshakable tension wove through my thoughts. As we compiled our observations, I couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Would I learn to summon joy at will? Or would these happiness chemicals remain elusive, dancing just out of reach? With each word written, the yearning for clarity deepened. What secrets were still hidden in the brain's tangled landscape, waiting for me to unravel them? Psychology and positive emotions. It wasn't until I sat across from Jane, my therapist, that I truly realized the immense power of positive emotions. Our sessions often felt like a personal excavation site, digging through layers of my past to unearth the golden nuggets of happiness that always seemed so elusive. I remember vividly one particular session when Jane introduced me to the concept of positive psychology, a field devoted to understanding what makes life worth living. As she explained, I felt a flicker of hope in what seemed like an unending winter of negativity. She spoke of theories championed by psychologists like Martin Seligman, who emphasized that while it's important to address mental illness, we must also study what enhances well-being. It was a revelation. I was not just a collection of problems to be fixed. Instead, I could be a garden cultivated with joy, gratitude, and love. Each positive emotion a seed that, when nurtured, could flourish into a bountiful harvest of happiness. During our next session, Jane encouraged me to think of moments that made me genuinely happy. Here I was, rusty in the art of appreciation, my mind darting around like a pinball machine. But with her gentle guidance, I unearthed memories: a long-lost childhood laughter, the warmth of a friend's hug, the vibrant sunset that once took my breath away. Each recollection sparked a sense of warmth within me, a flicker of light amidst the shadows that had clouded my thoughts. Slowly, I began to see a pattern. It wasn't just the big events that mattered, but the extraordinary sprinkled throughout the ordinary. As weeks turned into months, I made a conscious effort to embrace positivity. I started a gratitude journal, jotting down 3 things each day that brought me joy. Some days it was as simple as enjoying a delicious cup of coffee, while other days it was feeling proud of a small accomplishment at work. The act of writing these moments down transformed my perspective. They became beacons guiding me away from despair. Jane explained that expressing gratitude releases dopamine, our brain's feel good chemical. I was almost giddy at the notion that my happiness was, in part, within my control. But then came a moment that shook the foundation of my newfound positivity. One session, Jane asked a question that lingered heavy in the air between us. What happens when you fall back into negativity? Can you still embrace your positive side? I paused, my heart racing. The air thickened, and silence wrapped around us like a cold blanket. What did I do when I felt low? Would I descend into that dark pit again despite the joy I was cultivating? That was the crux of it, wasn't it? Would embracing positivity mean ignoring the shadows lurking at the edges of my mind? In that electrifying moment, I realized it wasn't about eradicating negativity. Life was a tapestry woven from both light and dark threads, and I had to learn how to appreciate both to create a masterpiece. What if embracing positivity meant allowing myself to feel sadness and pain without judgment? What if those moments of darkness were not enemies, but part of the same journey? As the session drew to a close, Jane encouraged this exploration. It felt daunting, yet liberating. I left feeling the weight of complexity resting comfortably on my shoulders, instilling a new sense of courage to tackle my emotional spectrum. Neuroscience of Joyful Living. As I sat in the dimly lit lecture hall, the hushed murmur of anticipation floated through the air. I had signed up for this seminar with Dr. Ray, a neuroscientist whose passion for demystifying the brain left audiences not just richer in knowledge, but eager to apply it. Today, I wanted to crack open the vault of joy, to understand how the intricate wiring of our brains influences our capacity for happiness. It was a question that stalked me. If our perceptions shape our realities, then how could I reshape my thoughts to invite more joy into my life? Dr. Ray began his presentation with a seemingly simple idea. The brain is plastic. This blew my mind. Plasticity implied that our thoughts and experiences could physically alter our brain's structure. It was as if I were handed a set of tools and told to build my own happiness. The concept of cognitive reframing became my focus. I learned that by consciously choosing how to interpret our experiences, we could foster more positive emotions, a realization that sent shivers of excitement down my spine. Leaving the seminar, I embarked on personal experiments of cognitive reframing. I remember vividly the day I found myself fixated on a disagreement I'd had with a friend. Instead of wallowing in frustration, I internalized Dr. Ray's teachings. I took a step back, reevaluated the situation, and recognized that my friend and I were simply communicating from different places. With this reframe, irritation melted into understanding. It was astonishing how quickly my mood shifted. Realizing the potential of simple shifts in thought, I started tracking my daily emotions, sharing the journey with a close-knit group of friends who were equally dedicated to seeking joy. Weeks turned into months, and our discussions grew richer. We experimented together. One friend attempted to find gratitude in her long commute. Another re-examined the stress of her job as an opportunity for growth. Each week, we shared our findings, celebrating small victories while supporting one another through struggles. It was like a collective brain rewiring session. We were crafting a space where positivity could flourish amidst the chaos of life. But it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies. One evening, during one of our gatherings, the atmosphere shifted. I shared an incident where my reframing tactics had failed miserably, leaving me disheartened and questioning my efforts. My heart raced as I spoke. Could we truly cultivate joy when life seemed insistent on throwing curveballs? I watched as my friends leaned in, their expressions a mixture of concern and understanding. This sudden vulnerability unveiled the raw underbelly of our pursuit for joy, a truth I hadn't anticipated. Here we were, openly acknowledging that the path to joy was not linear, nor always attainable. Yet in that moment of shared struggle, I felt a sense of connection and resilience. The warmth between us bore witness to the very findings I was eager to grasp. Joy was multi-layered, complex, and sometimes unseen until brought to the light by our own cognitive efforts. That night, we lingered longer than usual, speaking in hushed voices about the intersections of happiness and hardship. I realized then, among friends, we had started forging a new kind of brain connection, one layered with empathy and understanding. As I left the gathering, a new question loomed in my mind. How do we maintain this connection, not just among friends but with ourselves, when the world seems heavy and burdensome? As I grappled with this thought, I felt an electric tension in the air. I hadn't expected the journey toward joyful living to be so fraught with uncertainty. At that moment, I knew we were all on the precipice of something profound. Would our collective efforts pay off? Would embracing the neuroplasticity of our minds lead to a lasting transformation? Or were we merely scratching the surface? The answers danced tantalizingly close, just beyond the horizon of my understanding. Chapter 3: Gratitude, the Heart of Happiness. The Power of Thankfulness. It was one of those dreary afternoons when the sky seemed to mirror my mood, a soft gray blanket that wrapped around everything in sight. I stared out the window, watching the raindrops race each other down the glass, and felt an overwhelming sense of heaviness settle in my chest. It was during moments like these that my mother's voice echoed in my mind, a gentle yet firm reminder: find something to be thankful for, even when it feels impossible. I had rolled my eyes at her countless times, skeptical of the simple power of gratitude, but today I felt the weight of her words pressing down on me like lead. As I reflected on my life, I could see the countless lessons she imparted, often paired with warm cookies fresh from the oven, or during quiet evenings sitting together on the porch. The tough times were the highlights in our story, each one cornered by the soft glow of thankfulness. I remembered the summer I had lost my job. I had sulked for weeks, drowning in self-pity and uncertainty. But my mother had made it a mission to help me see beyond the immediate hurt. You may not have a job right now, but think of the freedom it offers you. There's time to explore what you truly want, she said with a smile that was both comforting and challenging. It hadn't clicked immediately, but that seed of gratitude she planted began to grow, pushing me towards resilience. Time and again, I found that her gentle nudge to recognize the positives had a curative power. Even in the face of disappointment, I discovered that by shifting my focus from what I lacked to what I had, I could transform despair into hope. I often sat by her as she shared stories of her younger years, narrating the struggles she faced in raising us with limited means, yet all the while finding joy in the simpler things: a good book, a strong cup of coffee, or the laughter of friends. These reflections were not just mindless nostalgia. They were reminders of the steadfast, unwavering nature of gratitude. Every time she shared, I could feel my heart lift a little more, as if each story was dusting off the cobwebs of cynicism that sometimes settled in my mind. There was a time I faced rejection that felt devastating. A piece I had poured myself into was met with silence rather than applause, and I spiraled into a darkness, losing the belief in my own voice. I sulked, not wanting to eat, sleep, or even face the world. It was my mother who knocked on my door, bringing with her the scent of freshly baked banana bread. As I took a bite, she sat beside me, quiet for a moment before speaking. "What can you find to be grateful for in this?" she asked gently. At first, I wanted to dismiss her question, but slowly it simmered in my mind. I realized I was grateful for the courage to try, for the lessons in perseverance, and eventually for the ability to share my art with others. It was a moment of clarity that broke through the haze of disappointment, one that illustrated the transformative power of thankfulness within my life. This practice began to feel less like forced positivity and more like a lens, a way to see the world differently. Each day became an opportunity to seek out blessings, even in discomfort. I kept a journal where I noted down the little things: laughter shared with friends, a random compliment from a stranger, or the stillness of a starry night. With each entry, I was stitching together a tapestry of resilience, crafted from the threads of gratitude that wove through my life. But just as I began to settle into this new habit, something dark loomed on the horizon, threatening to unravel all that I had built. It was early spring when my mother fell ill, her once vibrant laughter reduced to muffled coughs. As I sat waiting for results in the stark, sterile hospital room, gratitude felt like a distant whisper, lost amidst a storm of fear and uncertainty. The very woman who taught me the essence of thankfulness now needed every ounce of strength I had gathered over the years. I could feel a tugging at my heart, that familiar heaviness returning. In this suffocating moment, I struggled to find a single thing to hold on to. But then I remembered her unwavering belief in gratitude, even when the world was at its darkest. I sensed the fingers of panic gripping my throat. I had to breathe, and in that breath, I thought of our shared moments, the wisdom in her stories and the love that wrapped around each lesson, each instilling resilience in the face of adversity. I glanced around the room, searching for something, anything to be thankful for. My eyes landed on the small window, the faintest glow of sunshine breaking through the clouds. I closed my eyes and clung to that image. It was the beginning of a new chapter in our lives, one that might test every lesson I had learned. But perhaps within this trial, I would find a new depth to my gratitude. I would fight for it, for her, for us. Practicing gratitude daily. As the sun spills through our kitchen window each morning, painting the walls with warm hues, I settle into my favorite chair with a steaming cup of coffee, one I've come to look forward to just as much as the caffeine it contains. This daily ritual has transformed into something more than a simple routine for Jamie and me. It has become a sacred space where gratitude takes center stage. We sit across from each other, our mugs cradled in hand, and take turns sharing the things we're grateful for. This practice, I've found, grounds us. It reminds us of our blessings, big and small, as the world rushes past outside our cozy cocoon. On one particularly gray morning, I remember feeling a strange heaviness in my chest. The usual list of thankful notes seemed buried under a weight of mundane worries, the bills piling up, the looming deadlines, the ever pressures of life. But as I shared my thoughts with Jamie, something shifted. I realized how easy it is to overlook the simple joys. I found myself speaking of the sun breaking through the clouds, the warmth of his smile, the laughter echoing in our home. By the time we finished our coffees, I felt lighter, unburdened by the anxieties that had dominated my mind only moments ago. That realization changed everything for me. It taught me that gratitude isn't just a pleasant thought, it's a powerful antidote to stress and negativity. From that day forward, I decided to deepen my gratitude practice. I invested in a small journal, a simple, unassuming thing, and began jotting down 3 things each evening that had filled me with joy throughout the day. Some nights, it was a delicious meal I savored. Other nights, it was a conversation that stirred my heart. The pages filled up with color and texture, the ink capturing moments that brought me peace. I soon discovered that this act of reflection not only allowed the good moments to resonate longer, but also shifted my perspective. My mind started to search for the beautiful in the mundane, turning everyday occurrences into treasures I could cherish. Encouraging readers to explore their own gratitude journeys, I implore you to find what resonates with you. Maybe your morning routine can serve as a catalyst for reflection, or perhaps you too can embrace the comforting practice of journaling. I have learned that each person's expression of gratitude will look different. Some may find solace in nature, pausing to appreciate the beauty of a blooming flower, while others may prefer to share their thanks verbally with those they love. My motivation comes from an innate understanding that in a world often clouded by challenges, pausing to acknowledge the good can spark joy and foster resilience. But, as I have learned, the true test of my gratitude practice came on a particularly challenging day. Life threw us a curveball when Jamie faced an unexpected health scare, and the grip of fear tightened around me. In that moment, it felt impossible to find grateful notes to articulate. Yet when the shock wore off, I remembered my nightly reflections. I leaned into my gratitude practice like a life raft, connecting to the love around me, appreciating the care of our family and the fact that we were together, confronting the unknown hand in hand. This powerful shift in perspective, birthed from consistent practice, shielded me from despair. It illuminated the strength we possessed, not just as individuals, but as partners. As I share this journey of gratitude, I hope it resonates with you. often leaving you to contemplate your own life, your own routines, and what spaces you might carve out for yourself each day. Let these moments transform your perception, infuse vibrancy into even the dullest days, and connect you to others through the magic of shared appreciation. As life unfolds unpredictably, it is often the threads of gratitude that weave our experiences into a tapestry that tells a beautiful story, full of lessons, love, and the profound realization that we have much to be thankful for. In your practice lies the potential to uncover hidden treasures in every day, leading you to insights and growth beyond your wildest expectations. Gratitude journals, my journey. It all began in a time of uncertainty. I had just lost my job, and the weight of hopelessness clung to me like a stubborn second skin. One evening, while aimlessly scrolling through social media, a post caught my eye. Start a gratitude journal. Skeptical but desperate, I decided to give it a shot. It felt silly at first, writing down things like, "I'm grateful for my cup of coffee," or "I appreciate the blue sky." Yet I somehow felt a flicker of warmth spread through me with each entry, a tiny shift I didn't expect. The first few weeks were a mixed bag. Some days, writing came easily, and I could list 10 things without breaking a sweat. Other days, when the clouds in my mind felt too heavy, I would sit there staring at the page, feeling like I was forcing positivity to bloom in a winter garden. But I pushed through. I knew that even in tough times, finding silver linings was meant to be a practice worth cultivating. It became evident that there was more to this journey than just the surface level entries. As I ventured deeper into my gratitude practice, I found myself reflecting on moments that deserved to be celebrated. I began to notice the little joys hidden within mundane routines, the warmth of my cat curled in my lap, the soothing sound of rain tapping against the window, and the kindness of strangers. I would share my journaling experience with friends, eager to learn if they had explored this path. Alex, ever poetic, recounted how journaling became a creative outlet for him. Over mugs of steaming tea, he shared lines penned in his own journal. Gratitude is the melody that plays softly, even when life's symphony overwhelms. I treasured our conversations, yet they also stirred a curiosity within me. What if I could capture such melodies in my own words? As the weeks turned into months, I saw incredible changes in myself. My mindset was shifting. I found resilience where once there was despair. But the true test of my practice came after a mass of alarming news. It felt as if the world was crumbling, and I struggled to maintain my gratitude practice amidst the chaos. I opened my journal and stared at the blank page, a stark reminder of the struggle. Beneath the weight of anxiety, I felt myself slipping, but I forced my pen to move. I wrote one line: "I am grateful for the strength to keep trying." The moment I inked that thought, a wave of vulnerability crashed over me, exposing my fissures and fears. This act of vulnerability felt both terrifying and cathartic. Would my attempt to glean gratitude from such dark times diminish the gravity of what was happening? I wrestled with that very thought as I penned my fear. Yet here I stood, pen in hand, heart exposed, and the urge to document what I felt overwhelming my resistance. In the quiet of my room, I realized that this practice wasn't just about the good, but embracing the current storm. I turned the corner with my journaling that night, feeling a raw connection between living authentically and expressing gratitude. By the end of the month, my entries became more layered, rich with emotion. What started as a mere exercise evolved into a dialogue with myself, revealing fears, dreams, and ambitions intermingled with gratitude for the experiences that shaped me. As I sifted through the scrawls of my days, I sensed a new bond forming not just with my journal, but with the very essence of who I was in a world that felt unsteady. Now the question lingered: could I inspire someone else on this journey? One afternoon at the park, I met up with a few friends, eager to share my revelations. With each story exchanged, whether it was Alex's poetic musings or Maya's pragmatic approach, I felt something deep and beautiful unfurl within our circle. We each carried a different perspective, a kaleidoscope of gratitude, organizing emotions into a spectrum that somehow deeply resonated together. But the deeper I ventured into sharing my journey, the heavier the tension that wove itself into the air. Would they see the value in mine? would I be able to articulate the often misunderstood nuances of gratitude and resilience to those closest to me. Chapter 4: Mindfulness and Presence, Living in the Moment. It was a nippy Saturday morning when Rachel called me up. "How about a hike?" she proposed, the excitement in her voice infectious. The idea of plunging ourselves into the wilderness, leaving our phones and the digital world behind, seemed invigorating. In that moment, it felt like an act of rebellion against our always connected lives, a small leap towards mindfulness. Minutes later, with only the essentials packed, I felt a familiar mix of freedom and anxiety as we drove away from the comforting glow of the city. As we began to hike, the air was crisp and untouched. The trees were dressed in vibrant autumn leaves, their golden hues a feast for the eyes. Without the distraction of our phones, we allowed ourselves to be engulfed by nature. We laughed freely, sharing stories that had long been buried under the weight of our daily routines. I was captivated by the sounds, the crunch of leaves beneath our boots, the rustle of branches, the distant call of a woodpecker. It was a reminder that life bombarded us with beauty every single day. We just rarely took a moment to notice it. As we climbed higher, the world below us shrank, and so did our worries. I couldn't help but think of how often I reached for my phone out of habit, scrolling through social media as if it filled some void. The irony settled in, distraction in the name of connection. Our venture into the woods was a stark contrast, an invitation to embrace the moment rather than curate it. Here we were merely existing, and in that existence I felt something shift within me. Just as we paused at a vista, the sky looming above us gleamed with possibilities, radiating the sheer beauty of being present. But as exhilaration and tranquility wrapped around us, a lurking tension broke the spell. A distant rumble echoed, a storm was approaching. Rachel glanced at me, worry flickering across her face. "We should probably head back," she suggested. Doubt crept in, yet a part of me longed to conquer that moment. "Can we just stay a bit longer?" I asked, half challenging the impending storm and half doubting the choice I was making. A struggle brewed within, the sweet allure of embracing the now tainted by the encroaching reality of consequences. Rachel nodded, and for that fleeting moment, we both chose adventure over caution, living fully in the present. But the wind began to howl, the rustling trees growing restless around us, as if nature was reminding us of its power. Still, I clung to the joy of being here, until reality crashed in like a wave. The sky erupted into a dark canvas, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Panic surged through me, washing away the warmth of our carefree exploration. "Let's go," I shouted, and we sprinted back down the path, laughter mingling with fear, uncertainty in our hurried steps. As we raced against nature's fury, I grappled with the choices we'd made. The thrill, was it worth this chaos? But then I thought of the beauty we'd witnessed, the raw, unfiltered moments that had made us feel so alive. It struck me then, yes, it wasn't just about escaping technology. It was about the realization that life, in all its moments, held risks and rewards hand in hand. Among the debris of anxiety, an undeniable truth lingered. We always had a choice to step back into the beauty of now, even when it felt uncertain. Meditation techniques for everyone. As I embarked on this transformative journey, I encountered numerous meditation techniques, but the most profound insights came from the simplest practices. One day, while sitting cross-legged in my living room, I recalled the deep breathing exercises Mia, my yoga instructor, taught. Her calm voice echoed in my mind, guiding me back to the present moment. Breathe in deeply through your nose, feel your belly expand, and exhale gently through your mouth. Even now, this fundamental technique never fails to ground me, no matter how chaotic life becomes. In the early days, I often struggled to quiet my racing thoughts. There were times when sitting silently felt like trying to tame 1,000 wild horses galloping through my mind. I remember one particular afternoon, teetering on the edge of overwhelm, I decided to turn to guided meditations. I opened a popular app, closed my eyes, and let the soothing voice lead me through a visualization exercise. It was as if I was transported to a serene beach, the sound of waves washing over my worries. That moment taught me that meditation could be a lifeline, and not just an abstract practice reserved for seasoned yogis. For those of you who may feel intimidated by the idea of meditating, Fret not. Let me share a step by step approach I've honed over countless sessions. First, find a comfortable position, whether sitting or lying down. Set a timer for just 5 minutes. A small commitment can seem less daunting. Next, focus on your breath. Inhale deeply, then exhale slowly. If your mind wanders, and it likely will, gently guide it back to your breath without judgment. With practice, this simple exercise gradually became my refuge, a space where clarity emerged from the chaos. As I continued to explore the myriad meditation styles available, I stumbled upon loving kindness meditation, which shifted my perspective entirely. I can still recall my hesitations as I sat in a dimly lit room one evening, preparing to send love and compassion to myself and others. It felt foreign, almost uncomfortable, but as I uttered the phrases silently, something within me began to soften. I realized meditation was not just about finding peace, it was about cultivating connection, both with ourselves and those around us. The real turning point came one particularly stressful week at work. I felt the pressure building, the anxiety creeping in like an unwelcome guest. I hadn't practiced meditation in a few days, and it was taking its toll. Frustrated, I sought refuge in a quick 5 minute session during my lunch break. I closed my eyes, breathed in deeply, and concentrated on the sensations of my body melting into the chair. To my surprise, that brief moment carved a newfound sense of clarity from the fog of stress. There were challenges ahead, but suddenly they felt manageable. Meditation was no longer just an escape, it became my source of strength. This journey isn't merely about sitting in silence, it's about integrating these moments into our daily lives. I encourage you to explore what resonates with you. Whether it's a daytime walk with mindful breath, a brief moment of stillness before bed, or using an app during a hectic afternoon, meditation is just waiting to be discovered. It is a constant evolving process. As the metaphorical mat unrolls beneath us, we learn that each breath we take is an invitation to return home to ourselves. And yet, as I reflect on this journey, I can't help but feel that a deeper lesson lurks beneath the surface, one that asks me to confront my growing understanding of what meditation truly means. What if, beyond finding inner peace, it holds a key to facing our fears, the ones we shove into the recesses of our minds? As I ponder this thought, I feel a flutter of anxiety mixed with excitement. Are we ready, together, to delve deeper into this unknown territory where meditation can transform not only our moments of solitude, but also our encounters with life's many challenges? Mindfulness in daily life. It was a Tuesday evening, the sky fading into hues of lavender and deep blue, when Leo and I stepped into the kitchen to prepare dinner together. Cooking had always been one of those tasks we often rushed through, our conversations filled with the hum of the stove and the chopping of vegetables. But that evening, as we gathered our ingredients, fresh basil, ripe tomatoes, and a golden onion, I felt a spark of intent to be present in every moment of our culinary journey. As I chopped the onion, the sharp scent filled the air, momentarily distracting me. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and focused on the rhythm of my knife against the cutting board. The sound was oddly soothing, almost like a metronome guiding my thoughts. When I opened my eyes, Leo was stirring the sauce on the stove, his forehead furrowed in concentration. I reached out to touch his shoulder, sharing a silent moment, a connection that transformed the task of dinner prep into a shared meditation. The joy of being present with each slice, each stir, began to radiate through the room. Afterward, as we sat together at the dinner table, I couldn't help but reflect on the profoundness of that evening. Mindfulness, I realized, wasn't just about quieting the mind or finding stillness in the chaos. It was about weaving awareness into our daily lives, whether through tasting the richness of our meal or in the quiet moments between words. Over the next few weeks, I began to explore how mindfulness could flourish in ordinary moments, and it turned our simple interactions into little rituals of joy. In seeking to understand this concept deeper, I decided to speak with friends and family about their experiences with mindfulness. It was during one such conversation with my sister Mia that I discovered how she integrated it into her morning routine. I started focusing on my breath while I brush my teeth, she shared with a grin. It sounds bizarre, but it changes how I face the day. Her laughter was infectious, and I joined in, marveling at how such a small practice transformed her morning from mundane to meaningful. As my conversations deepened, I realized there was an ebb and flow to our collective experiences with mindfulness. Every person had their unique rhythm, whether it was savoring their coffee, engaging in a mindful walk, or being fully present during conversations. There was a common thread, though, the acknowledgement that these moments didn't just enhance our lives but were necessary for our well being in a world that often felt overwhelming. Yet, as I immersed myself in these practices, I found myself grappling with an internal struggle. While some days flowed naturally, filled with grace and ease, others became battlegrounds against restless thoughts and distractions. The tension mounted within me as I attempted to hold on to the high of my newfound mindfulness. Was it too ambitious to think I could remain present all the time? Would I risk disappointment if I fell short? I shared these concerns with Leo, who gently reminded me, mindfulness is more about the journey than the destination. His words echoed in my ears as I sat by the window, watching the rain trickle down the glass. Perhaps there was beauty in the attempts, in the struggles, and in embracing imperfections, a lesson I needed to learn. That night, as the rain created a soothing soundtrack, I closed my eyes and reflected on the day. I realized that while I strove for mindfulness, it wasn't about achieving a perfect state of being. It was in the quiet acknowledgement of my thoughts and emotions, in the messiness of daily life. And as I drifted to sleep, I felt a growing excitement about the small magical shifts happening within me and around me, aware of the transformative power of simply being present. Chapter 5: The Role of Relationships Connection as a Happiness Booster. As I walked into the familiar hall, the scent of freshly baked cookies mingling with laughter drew me in. It was our annual reunion, a cherished tradition that had endured the test of time. Reuniting with friends who had become like second family over the years filled me with a sense of anticipation. Each face that greeted me was a reminder of the joy woven into the fabric of our shared experiences, the kind of joy that connects us deeply in a way that little else can. We often underestimate the power of human connections, especially in this fast-paced world where distraction lurks at every corner. Phones buzz with notifications, and social media feeds fill our screens with curated glimpses of others' lives. But as I sat down with my old friends, the realness of our interactions felt like a breath of fresh air. Laughter erupted as we recalled unforgettable memories, from late-night study sessions to spontaneous road trips. Each story echoed with the warmth of camaraderie, reminding me of the profound happiness that arises when we connect heart to heart. Research supports what we felt intuitively that day. Connections are essential for our happiness and overall well-being. Studies show that strong social ties can increase our lifespan, reduce stress, and even boost our immune system. As we exchanged stories and caught up on life, I felt a sense of belonging wash over me, something that no amount of scrolling could replicate. But the reunion not only celebrated our past, it also reinforced the importance of maintaining these connections in our lives. I noticed, too, the subtle unease in a few of my friends' eyes as they spoke about the challenges of staying connected amidst their busy lives. Yet as the evening wore on, I could see the tension release, smiles blooming across their faces, reminding us all of what truly matters. But then, as the night drew to a close and people began to talk about saying goodbye, I felt the familiar knot in my stomach. Would this be the last time we gathered like this? I knew how easily life could pull us in different directions. The laughter that once filled the room began to fade into nervous chatter about future plans and schedules. I sensed a collective anxiety masked by cheerful smiles. Just as I was about to voice my concern, Sarah, one of my closest friends, stood up with a spark of clarity in her eyes. With determination, she proposed, "Let's make this a monthly thing." It was a simple idea, yet one that held the potential to transform our scattered lives into a tapestry of ongoing connection. As everyone united in agreement, raising their glasses in unison, I felt a swell of emotion fill my heart. This wasn't just a proposal. It was a commitment to nurture our ties, to ensure that amid life's chaos, we wouldn't let each other slip away into the background. In that moment, I realized that maintaining connections isn't just about the joyous gatherings, but about actively choosing to support each other through life's ups and downs. Even as the world rushed on, we could create our own anchor of joy, a resolute mantra that would remind us happiness is truly found not in solitude, but in connection, nurturing healthy relationships. When I think back on my friendship with Emma, I'm often struck by how we've woven our lives together through shared experiences, laughter, and those awkward silences that sometimes say more than words ever could. There was a time when we were just acquaintances. Our conversations revolved around mundane topics, the weather, and mutual friends. But as life threw challenges our way, we discovered something profound in our connection, a bond that has shaped our understanding of what it means to nurture healthy relationships. This journey has taught me invaluable strategies to strengthen not only my friendship with her, but all of my relationships. One of the most important insights I've gained is the significance of boundaries. In the beginning, it felt odd to think of boundaries as a form of love. But the truth is that boundaries are the invisible lines that help define our individual needs while allowing us to coexist in a meaningful way. I remember the day Emma and I had a heart-to-heart about what makes us comfortable and what we needed from each other. I shared my struggles with feeling overwhelmed, and she revealed how she sometimes felt neglected when I was overloaded with work. This simple conversation turned our friendship from surface-level chatter to true partnership. We established rules for checking in about our emotional states, which made both of us feel cared for and respected. Communication is another pillar of healthy relationships, one that Emma and I have come to master over time. It goes beyond just talking. It's about listening, expressing ourselves honestly, and ensuring that our voices are heard. I learned the power of I statements. When I'm upset, I focus on expressing my feelings rather than accusing her of wrongdoing. For example, instead of saying, "You never text me back," I learned to say, "I feel neglected when I don't hear from you." This shift allowed Emma to understand my feelings without feeling attacked. More than once, we've danced around touchy subjects, only to find clarity through patience and empathy. It has taught me that almost every issue can be navigated when we come from a place of care and understanding. As we grew together, we each developed a deeper sense of empathy, a quality I believe is vital for nurturing any relationship. Empathy is more than just putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. It's about walking a mile in them, understanding their stories deeply enough to see life from their perspective. There was a particularly tough period when Emma was facing personal challenges. I tried to relate to her struggles, but it felt inadequate. However, I realized that sometimes what our loved ones need most isn't analysis or advice, but simply someone to sit with them in their pain. I made it a point to be present, to listen without trying to fix things. This change in approach helped us establish a safe space where all feelings were valid and both of us felt freer to express our vulnerabilities. Yet, even as I share these tools, boundaries, communication, and empathy, it's crucial to acknowledge that nurturing relationships isn't always smooth sailing. There will be bumps along the road. Just as I felt encouraged by the depth of my friendship with Emma, a jarring incident shook the foundation we had built. During a misunderstanding, my words were taken out of context, and suddenly, everything we had worked for felt at risk. Emma withdrew, hurt by what I had said. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog, and for a moment I feared that I had ruined our connection. My heart raced as I scrambled to clarify my intentions, but would it be enough? That moment was not just a test of our friendship, but of everything I'd learned. The stakes had never been higher as I prepared to confront the disarray my words had caused. Community and belonging. Reflecting on my journey through various communities, both online and offline, prompts a swirl of emotions. The first community that comes to mind is the volunteer group I joined a few years ago. Initially, it was an attempt to fill my time, but little did I know it would transform my perception of belonging. When I showed up for that first meeting, a mix of curiosity and apprehension welled within me. I had no idea what to expect, but the warmth of the smiles around the room quickly put me at ease. As I attended more sessions, I learned that belonging is not just about being present, it's about connection. Each member of the group came from different backgrounds, yet we shared a common goal: to make a difference in our community. We crafted meals for those in need, organized fundraisers, and even set up tidy community gardens. Each act of service bonded us closer, and as we worked side by side, I began to see the beauty in our diverse experiences. The stories shared while chopping vegetables or wrapping gifts during the holidays forged connections stronger than any online platform I had ever experienced. The online communities I had previously engaged with felt fragmented in comparison. While they served as a source of information and occasional entertainment, they often lacked that palpable sense of connection that you can feel in a room filled with shared laughter and purpose. Yet, as I immersed myself further into the volunteer space, I realized the importance of seeking out or even creating supportive networks. Whether it's a local group or an online forum, I learned that community thrives on mutual support and shared dreams. That realization not only inspired me to nurture my local connections, but also to bring the same ethos to my online interactions. But then came a turning point. Just as I found my footing, our group faced a crisis. The future of our volunteer program was under threat due to lack of funding. We gathered in a dimly lit community center, anxiety hanging thick in the air. As we brainstormed ways to rally support, I felt a swell of emotion. The connections we had forged felt like they were genuinely at stake. We rallied together, pouring our hearts into the campaign to save our initiatives. Little did I know, it was this very moment that would test the strength of our bonds and push me to reflect on what belonging truly means. Can a community survive the threat of loss? And how far would we all go to ensure it thrived? In the weeks that followed, we crafted a plan, took to social media, and engaged local businesses. I found myself filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The camaraderie in our meetings grew. We laughed, we brainstormed, and yes, we even cried together. The moment we received news that our funding had been secured became a pivotal milestone. It wasn't just about the program itself, it was about the collective strength we had built. We celebrated the victory, but more than that, we celebrated each other, fellow warriors in this unified cause. It became clear that community isn't just a word, it's a tapestry woven from numerous threads, each unique and vital. As I reflect on my experiences, I realize the importance of continually seeking out spaces where we can connect meaningfully. Every one of us has the power to create or nurture a community. Whether it's helping a friend, participating in local initiatives, or engaging in online dialogues, we must all contribute to the collective wealth of togetherness. My journey taught me that the concept of belonging is not a destination, but a continuous path shaped by our efforts and our connections with others. So, as you navigate your own chapters, I encourage you to seek those who will help you build your own supportive networks and cherish the extraordinary bonds that arise when we come together with intention. Chapter 6: Finding Purpose and Meaning. What drives you? It was late on a Thursday evening, and the distant hum of the city started to fade into a soft whisper as I sat in Dr. Sam's cluttered office, surrounded by stacks of books and the scent of brewed coffee. This place, an oasis of learning amidst the chaos of my life, had become both a sanctuary and a battleground for my thoughts. "Why do you do what you do?" he had asked, his voice warm yet probing, like sunlight filtering through an autumn forest. I fumbled for words, realizing I had never truly pondered that question. My encounters with doubt had been too frequent, and self-discovery felt more like an elusive mirage than a tangible goal. As I let the question hang in the air, the memories of my professional journey flooded back. Each role played, each setback endured, and each small victory celebrated. It wasn't merely about climbing the ladder or the accolades I had achieved. It was about connection and purpose. Dr. Sam leaned forward, his eyes sharp and eager, encouraging me to dig deeper. Think about the moments when you felt alive in your work. What sparked joy? What made you lose track of time? His inquiry stirred something within me, a flicker of clarity amid the fog of uncertainty that had clouded my thoughts for so long. As I recounted pivotal moments, I realized that aligning my passions with my profession had been a gradual, sometimes painful, journey. Each time I dismissed my interests, fearing they would lead me astray, I found myself adrift, feeling like a ship without a compass. Wrestling with societal expectations versus my desires, I finally recognized the common thread woven through my experiences: the drive to inspire and connect. In the early years of my career, I often doubted whether I could make a real impact. Dr. Sam had become my anchor in these turbulent waters, guiding me through times when I felt no more than an imposter, particularly during that project we worked on together, the one that had sparked both our passions and fears alike. Reflecting on those days, I remembered my heart racing with excitement at the thought of infusing my vision into our work, yet grappling with the fear of failure was overwhelming. I learned from Dr. Sam that fear could be either a stumbling block or a stepping stone. With persistence and encouragement from him, I began to embrace those moments of doubt. Each hesitation transformed into a lesson, driving me toward greater clarity and purpose. The smile on Dr. Sam's face as he reminded me how far I'd come ignited a fire within me, and I dared to dream bigger. Remember, he said, real fulfillment comes from pursuing work that resonates with your essence, not just what you think you should be doing. The tension grew as I prepared to face my personal crossroads, a decision looming like a storm cloud on the horizon. Would I continue down a path shaped by the ambitions of others, or would I have the courage to pursue the calling that felt uniquely mine? Leaving Dr. Sam's office that night, I felt invigorated yet anxious, realizing that the answers lay just beyond my comfort zone. As I stepped into the cool night air, the weight of uncertainty mingled with a sense of empowerment. The drive to truly discover what motivated me was no longer just a question, it was a journey, one that demanded exploration and vulnerability. The path before me shimmered with possibilities, but I was acutely aware that steep cliffs and unknown terrains could lie ahead. It would take all I had to push through the fear and truly embrace the pursuit of what drove me. I knew what I had to do: confront my fears, reconnect with my passions, and seek a life that felt authentic. The whispers of doubt still lingered in the back of my mind, but they were now accompanied by the heartbeat of discovery, echoing hope. I stepped forward, ready to embrace the tension of this unfolding story, the one that was decidedly mine. The intersection of passion and work. For years, I stood at the crossroads of my life, juggling the safe, predictable path of a 9-to-5 job with the exhilarating, albeit precarious, road that led to my passion for writing. I remember sitting at my desk, a tidy cubicle filled with the monotony of spreadsheets and reports, while the whispers of my true calling lingered just beyond my fingertips. It was during one of those long, drab meetings that I felt an igniting urge in my chest, a reminder of the stories I longed to share, the characters I carried with me like beloved friends. Work felt like a cage that kept my passions at bay, and I began to ponder, could I turn this burning desire into a tangible reality? After countless sleepless nights of deliberation, I decided to take the plunge. That warm summer evening, when I clicked submit on my first freelance writing piece, felt like the moment I cut the tension in the air with a knife. A blend of excitement and anxiety coursed through me as I ventured forth. Little did I know, this decision was just the beginning of a challenging yet thrilling journey. The initial rush of adrenaline was intoxicating, but the challenges soon came crashing in like a rogue wave. Each rejected pitch was a blow to my self-esteem, and the hours I dedicated to honing my craft outside of work pushed my relationships and personal life into the background. The balance was tenuous, leaving me perpetually exhausted, yet hopeful. The pivotal moment arrived when I found myself in front of an audience, sharing my work at a local literary event. The experience was transformative. I realized that every struggle had been worth it. I watched as eyes lit up while I recounted my stories. Suddenly, my passion and work were no longer separate entities. They infused one another, creating something much more vibrant than I had ever anticipated. The applause at the end resonated through my heart, echoing a truth I had been searching for. Pursuing passion was not only about personal fulfillment, but about touching others' lives. This chapter inspired me to encourage readers to find their intersection, where fulfillment blends with the work they do, fueling a journey toward crafting a life where passion and profession resonate harmoniously. But the tension hung heavy in the air. Despite the success I was beginning to taste, I found myself grappling with the weight of expectations, both self imposed and external. Would I always have to juggle both worlds? Would pursuing my passion lead to stability, or would it corner me into a cycle of fear? Over coffee one morning, I pondered whether passion could truly sustain me financially. Each question raised another ripple of uncertainty, yet the deeper I dove into my craft, the clearer it became that the rewards, both qualitative and quantitative, were worth the growing pains. I was on the brink of either breaking free or breaking down, and as I approached the precipice, I knew that it was time to leap. Creating a life of purpose. It's often said that searching for purpose is like chasing fog. You can see it in the distance, elusive and ethereal, but no matter how fast you run, it remains just out of reach. As I sat on my porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I wondered if I was standing still while the world rushed by. The feeling of stagnation gnawed at me. I had checked all the boxes: education, job, relationships, but I still felt something essential was missing. It was during these quiet moments of reflection that I realized I had been living on autopilot, just going through the motions without contemplating the why behind my actions. I embarked on a journey, reaching out to inspiring individuals who seemed to possess that elusive sense of purpose. Among them was my friend Alex, whose life seemed to be a vibrant tapestry of intention and fulfillment. I remember our conversation like it was yesterday. We sat at our favorite coffee shop, steam rising from our mugs, and I asked him how he had managed to align his values with his everyday life. There was a spark in his eye as he recounted his travels to volunteer in underprivileged communities. Each experience had added a new layer to his understanding of purpose, weaving together the threads of compassion, service, and community. As he shared his story, I couldn't help but reflect on my own experiences. I recalled the moments that set my heart on fire, organizing community cleanups, mentoring younger students, and even those small acts of kindness that often seem insignificant but echo in the hearts of those around us. Slowly, the pieces began to form a picture. Purpose wasn't some grand destination I needed to find, but rather a series of choices that reflected my values and brought joy to both my life and the lives of others. Motivated by Alex's wisdom, I decided to dive deeper into this pursuit. I reached out to others who had carved out lives filled with meaning, collecting gems of knowledge along the way. One poignant conversation with an elderly woman named Ruth left me particularly moved. She had spent decades working with children from troubled backgrounds, pouring her heart into nurturing the next generation. With tears in her eyes, she told me, "The greatest joy comes from helping others rise," a phrase that reverberated within me long after we parted. Here was a woman who understood that the essence of life is found not in what we accumulate, but in what we give away. As I continued to explore these rich narratives, I learned something crucial. Purpose is not a fixed point, but a fluid journey. With each story I absorbed, a clearer path began to form. I started aligning my actions with this newfound understanding. Small changes came first: a commitment to volunteer one weekend a month, attending local art workshops to unleash my creativity, and cultivating deeper connections with friends and family. Yet, I was still grappling with a larger question: how does one integrate purpose into the daily grind? It was a question that danced in the back of my mind, growing louder with each passing day. As I sat with my thoughts, I felt a restlessness building inside me, a tension between my newfound awareness and the familiar comforts of my day-to-day existence. I needed to dig deeper, to confront the shadows that lurked beneath my surface. Could it be that the fear of failure was holding me back? I had seen so many examples of beautiful lives lived with intention, yet I hesitated. It felt as if I was standing at the edge of a cliff, the view dauntingly inspiring, but the plunge frighteningly unknown. Finally, in a moment of vulnerability, I reached out to Alex again. What if I fail? What if pursuing my purpose means losing stability? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His response was both grounding and liberating. What's more frightening? Taking a leap into the unknown or remaining in a box that isn't yours? His words sparked a realization, a shift in perspective that saw failure not as a barrier, but as an essential part of the journey. Suddenly, it didn't strike me as a question of whether or not to leap. It was a question of what I wanted my leap to look like. With renewed determination, I joined Alex on a project he spearheaded, aimed at creating safe spaces for youth in our community. Each meeting drew me closer to my purpose, until the fog I had been chasing began to lift. I found myself laughing with kids who were eager to share their stories, and for the first time in a long while, I felt alive. My heart thrummed with excitement, reminding me that this was just the beginning of a much larger journey. But just as I began to feel grounded in my purpose, a sudden wave of self-doubt washed over me. Was I really cut out for this? What if I stumbled? The tension built as I faced the crossroads of ambition and fear, and I realized that the answers I sought were not in avoiding failure, but in embracing it. Purpose, I learned, was forged not through certainty, but through the courage to step into the unknown. Chapter 7: The Art of Letting Go. Grief and acceptance. Grief is an insidious thing. It seeps into your being without a sound and makes a home in your chest. I learned this the hard way when I lost my brother. The day he died, the world shifted beneath my feet. One moment, life was vibrant, full of laughter and future plans, and the next, it was as if someone had turned off the color. I sat in my living room, staring vacantly at the walls that just hours ago felt comforting as the news circled in my mind like a restless bird. Mia had told me that losing someone you love creates a chasm within you, a void that can never truly be filled. It feels both surreal and painfully real, like standing in front of a mirror, watching the reflection of someone you no longer recognize. Over the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in conversations with Mia. A kindred spirit, she had lost her mother just a year prior. We talked about the tidal waves of sadness that washed over us, sometimes without warning. I remember one evening when we sank into deep cushions on her porch, soft pillows supporting us as the sun dipped below the horizon. Grief is love, she shared, her voice steady, yet her eyes were glistening pools of understanding. It's love without a place to go. I mulled over her words, grappling with the idea that this unbearable pain stemmed from a love so profound it detoured through sorrow. Days turned into weeks, and I discovered that grief had its own rhythm, a tempo that quickened with memories and slowed with the absence of those future laughs we had planned to share. Acceptance, I learned, didn't mean forgetting. It meant finding a way to navigate life with this new reality. I noticed that Mia often smiled when she talked about her mother, her face lighting up in the glow of shared memories. It was a nuanced kind of happiness, one that embraced the hurt without letting it overshadow her existence. There was wisdom in her approach, a balance I hadn't yet found. I yearned for this harmony, fearful that clinging to my sadness would bury every joy beneath the weight of loss. We began to find solace in little things: a favorite song on the radio, the sweet scent of blooming jasmine, or the comforting warmth of a shared meal. Mia introduced me to the idea of creating a memory box where we could collect our favorite reminders of those we loved. I started with a simple slip of paper covered in my brother's handwriting and a photo of us on a sandy beach, our faces lit with carefree smiles. As I placed these mementos inside, I felt a flicker of light in the dark. It was a strange and beautiful realization. Happiness could coexist with sorrow. The two could hold hands in this intricate dance of life. But acceptance wasn't linear. Some days felt easier than others, and the shadow of grief would sometimes envelop me like a thick fog. I remember one such day. A song came on the radio, a melody my brother used to sing as he strummed his guitar. My heart lurched painfully in my chest, echoing with the absence of his laugh. I turned up the volume, letting the notes wrap around me while the tears streamed down uncontrollably. Mia's voice rang in my mind, reminding me that it was okay to cry, that I didn't have to bear this burden alone. It was then that I realized my sense of loss had transformed, taking on new dimensions with every breath I took. My heart swelled with hope and a profound understanding that grief and acceptance walk hand in hand. It was a mosaic of our emotions, each piece contributing to the display of who we are. As I conferred with Mia about our journeys through sorrow, I began to sense a shift within myself. I toyed with the idea of hosting a small gathering, a celebration of life. I wanted to share stories about my brother, to honor his memory while surrounded by those who were still here beside me. The thoughts excited me. With a tentative smile, I picked up my phone, ready to call Mia, eager to brainstorm together. However, as my finger hovered over her name, a small knot of fear gripped my insides. What if they'd all forgotten him? What if my effort to invite joy back into my life only spotlighted the absence we all felt? Feeling unsettled, I took a deep breath, bringing up Mia's last words for a second time. Grief is love. Perhaps my hesitation came from equating acceptance with forgetting. But acceptance is not erasure. It is acknowledgement and remembrance. It is allowing ourselves to step into the brightness for a moment while still holding the darkness. And as I dialed Mia's number, I felt a swell of determination rise within me, ready to embrace this new chapter, not just for me, but for my brother too. Releasing negative thoughts. During my teenage years, I often felt plagued by a relentless inner critic. It was an omnipresent voice, whispering or sometimes shouting every way I fell short. "You're not smart enough," it would say as I fretted over a math test. "You'll never fit in," it would remind me while I awkwardly navigated the cafeteria. That inner voice colored my self-image, turning my perceived flaws into glaring neon signs. But the turning point in my journey toward a healthier mindset began with recognizing that these thoughts were not truths, but rather narratives I had learned to accept. Identifying negative thoughts is like shining a flashlight into the dark, exposing the shadows that lurk just beyond perception. My initial step was to keep a journal, a simple exercise, but immensely powerful. Each evening, I would jot down the disheartening thoughts that had appeared throughout the day. Doing this not only made me aware of how often negativity crept in, but it also allowed me to name my demons. Once I gave my inner critic a label, it lost some of its power. Instead of letting it dictate my self-worth, I could now challenge it. "Oh, that's just Sandy," the name I gave the voice. Again, I'd think, rolling my eyes in disdain at the absurdity of its claims. As I moved forward, I learned to replace those negative thoughts with affirmations. Affirmations became my armor against self-doubt. "I am intelligent enough," I'd affirm before stepping into an exam, "and I am worthy of love and friendship," would echo gently in my mind as I entered social gatherings. Each repetition became a thread in the fabric of my self-belief. However, cultivating a positive mindset takes practice and patience. I wasn't always successful. Some days, Sandy's voice would overpower my own. "See, you didn't ace that test, did you?" But then came the day when my resolve was truly put to the test, the day I faced a monumental decision that would alter my path. Standing at the precipice of my future, I felt an all too familiar wave of doubt crash over me. The acceptance letter from my school of choice sat on my desk, glimmering with possibilities, yet all I could hear was Sandy's voice, taunting me. "You don't belong there," it droned. Panic began to set in, and tears threatened to spill over as I wondered if I truly had what it took to succeed. In that instant, I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and reached for the journal I had filled over the years. Flipping through the pages, I rediscovered the hundreds of moments where I had fought back against negativity, a trail of victories, no matter how small. With a newfound resolve, I decided to write a letter to my future self. It was a therapeutic exercise, to remind myself of the strength I possessed. "You are capable, and you will face challenges, but remember, challenges do not define you. Your responses do," I penned fervently. It was a message of empowerment, a way to silence Sandy in that moment. I sealed the letter in an envelope, addressing it to myself for 1 year in the future, hoping that when I opened it, I would be reminded of this pivotal moment and the tools I acquired. The tension between my current fears and the possibility of a brighter future began to dissolve, replaced with the gratitude for the journey I had undertaken. This blending of recognition, affirmation, and proactive coping mechanisms laid the groundwork for the more resilient self-image I now bask in. I realized that while negative thoughts may visit, they don't have to take up residence. So if you find yourself facing that inner critic, remember that it is possible to release those negative thoughts, much like releasing balloons into the sky, lighter with each one that soars away. Our narratives can evolve, and the tales we tell ourselves can transform into stories of hope and perseverance. Forgiveness as a path to joy. Forgiveness has always seemed like a lofty concept to me, straddling between nobility and the practicality of our everyday lives. At its core, it's about letting go, releasing the grip that our grudges have on us, even if it feels like we're losing a part of ourselves in the process. Admittedly, I struggled with this notion, but then an experience with my friend Jake began to reshape my understanding. Jake and I had been best friends since childhood, our lives interwoven like threads in a tapestry. But as life often does, it threw us a curveball. It happened during our senior year of high school when a misunderstanding turned into a full-blown conflict. An offhand comment I made about Jake's burgeoning interest in theater spiraled out of control. It wasn't my intention to belittle his passion, but my words struck deeper than I realized, igniting a rift that seemed insurmountable. The mocking tone I'd used to jest transformed into a weapon that wounded both of us. Days turned into weeks, and the air between us felt heavy with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I missed him terribly, but my pride held me back. After all, wasn't it easier to nurse my grievances than to confront the hurt? Then, one fateful afternoon, I found myself sitting alone in my room, trapped between the pain of our fallout and the memories of happier times. It hit me then, this bitterness I held on to wasn't just affecting Jake, it was stealing my joy. Thus, the first seed of forgiveness was planted. After a long, reflective week, I took a deep breath and reached out to Jake. I remember the trembling in my hands as I texted him, "Can we talk?" To my surprise, he replied almost immediately, "I'd like that." That single conversation marked the turning point. Sitting across from each other in our favorite diner, the warmth of the room clashed with the chill of our unresolved tension. We spent the first few minutes tiptoeing around the real issue, making small talk that felt both forced and awkward. I initiated, "I've missed you, man." Jake's eyes softened, and he nodded, his silence echoing volumes. But then, the dam of unexpressed emotions broke. I finally found the courage to say, "I'm really sorry for what I said. I didn't mean to hurt you." The weight of that admission hung in the air between us, heavy yet liberating. Jake took a while to respond, and just when I thought the moment was slipping away, he finally spoke. "You hurt me, but I also realized I was too sensitive. I should have talked to you instead of letting it fester." In that moment, something extraordinary happened. We both laid down our swords, realizing that the pains we inflicted were not insurmountable. It was mutual forgiveness that opened a door back to our friendship. I learned that forgiveness isn't just a gift we offer someone else, it's a gift we give ourselves too. As we spoke, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the joy that had been dormant breaking through like spring flowers after a long winter. Our laughter soon filled the space, like sunlight chasing away shadows. We both knew that the act of forgiving was a choice that promised freedom from our past burdens. Reflecting on that day, I realized that this experience was not just pivotal for Jake and me. It illuminated a universal truth. Holding on to anger or resentment will only serve to imprison us. The process of extending forgiveness is transformative. It creates space for healing and joy to flourish. Our personal conflict, which once felt like an insurmountable wall, became a bridge to deeper understanding and connection. Yet, it wasn't until much later that I recognized how forgiving ourselves was equally crucial. I found myself revisiting that incident not only as a story of reconciling with a friend, but with myself. There were moments in my life, choices I regretted, paths untraveled, that left me burdened with guilt. Each time I replayed those events in my mind, I felt a tight knot tying itself deeper within my chest. Eventually, I understood that just as I had forgiven Jake, I needed to extend that grace to myself. As I began to unravel those tangled emotions, I discovered that self-forgiveness was a practice. It was a conscious choice to let go of the self-judgment that had kept me shackled to my past mistakes. With every acknowledgement of my humanity, of my ability to falter, I felt a newfound lightness. I learned that real joy blossoms not in the absence of mistakes, but in our ability to embrace them and forgive ourselves just as we do with others. Forgiveness became not just a path to joy, but a foundation for it. I often reflect on my journey with Jake, and how that experience paved the way for profound change in my life. True joy is often masked by the weight of resentments we carry. Once we learn the alchemical process of turning that weight into understanding, compassion, and ultimately forgiveness, we open ourselves to a brighter, more joyful path forward. Chapter 8: The Importance of Self-Care. Listening to your body. It's fascinating how we often overlook the body's whispers until they become shouts. I discovered this truth during an especially frantic period at work, the kind of busy where deadlines blend into one another and the coffee in my cup seems to fuel the chaos rather than the calm. My colleague Lisa and I were nested in our cubicles, racing against the clock and each other. The pressure was palpable, and we both dove deeper into our tasks, thinking more hours and more effort equated to more success. But our bodies had different plans. Mine began subtly, a dull ache at the base of my neck, a fatigue that no amount of caffeine could shake. Lisa was not immune to this either. As days bled into weeks, her vibrant energy dimmed, revealing subtle signs of stress, a shortness of breath, a persistent headache that hadn't taken a day off in ages. We both laughed it off at first, believing it was merely the cost of ambition. Yet, inside, we were caught in a storm, one that only grew in intensity. It took an unexpected event for me to really start paying attention. One particularly frantic Thursday, as I huddled over a report, my heart started racing. Not from excitement or anxiety over the looming deadline, but from an undeniable sense of panic. My hands trembled as they hovered above the keyboard, and a deep sense of dread replaced the usual rush of adrenaline. I felt like I was losing control. It was the ultimate wake-up call, and a part of me whispered, "Stop." I took a breath, and that's when I realized my body was reaching out, begging for a moment of attention amidst the chaos. In that instant, I turned away from my screen and closed my eyes. I let the noise fade, breathe in, breathe out. Every inhale felt like a gentle anchor, pulling me away from the storm of deadlines, and every exhale released the pent-up tension coiling inside. I reflected on how often I had dismissed these cues before. Stress has a sneaky way of presenting itself physically, sharpening our focus on tasks while blurring the lines between our physical and emotional well-being. Whatever urgency I felt diminished as I acknowledged my body's needs, an epiphany that danced between exhaustion and relief. I shared my experience with Lisa the following day. She nodded, her dark circles betraying the sleepless nights grappling with the work mountain. We both acknowledged that we had been so consumed that we failed to listen. Those gentle hints from our bodies, the discomfort, fatigue, and anxiety, were more than mere inconveniences. They were signals reminding us to seek balance. "We need to recalibrate," I told her, which felt oddly empowering. In admitting our struggle, we granted ourselves permission to prioritize our well-being without guilt. As I began to hone in on my body's responses, I noticed a shift in my emotional health. Moods felt less volatile, and stress, while still persistent, became a manageable force instead of an overwhelming undertow. Before I knew it, a sense of clarity emerged from the fog of fatigue. In those moments, I learned that listening to my body was not merely about pain management or stress relief. It was about rediscovering joy in the very endeavor that had sparked it. With Lisa's support, we established boundaries, scheduled breaks, real meals away from our desks, and dare I say, moments of genuine laughter. Transforming our work culture to one where we regularly checked in with ourselves, both mentally and physically, was daunting at first. But we found joy again in the midst of urgency, and I noticed the silences between the crises grew more profound, allowing for clarity. There's an importance in tuning in, a connection that bridges our physical state to our emotional outlook. Yet, just when I thought clarity had arrived, an unexpected hiccup emerged, a project miscommunication that threatened to derail our newfound equilibrium. As the pressure mounted, I felt that familiar tension in my shoulders. It would have been so easy to revert to old habits, to ignore the signs and barrel forward. But this time, I paused. I gathered my breath, shared my feelings with Lisa, and we devised a plan not just to handle the task, but to prioritize our well-being amidst the storm. It's a constant dance, listening to your body while navigating life's demands. Moments of stress will come and go, as will the temptation to dismiss those signs. But now, As I settle back into the rhythms of my life, I remind myself that listening is a practice, a comfort in itself. It's not just about achieving happiness, it's about nurturing the body that carries us there, creating a self care routine. It wasn't until I hit a wall of exhaustion that I realized the importance of self care in my life. The whirlwind of daily responsibilities had left me dizzy, feeling as if I were merely existing rather than truly living. It was during a long, heartfelt conversation with my friend Zara that I had my epiphany. Over steaming cups of herbal tea, we shared our struggles, and I could see the light in her eyes when she spoke of her self care routines. I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. I knew it was time to prioritize myself, to craft a routine that spoke to my soul and nourished my weary heart. As we chatted, Zara laid out the guiding principles behind her rituals: consistency, mindfulness, and most importantly, fun. Self care doesn't have to be a chore, she insisted. It should be something you look forward to. Her words resonated deeply, prompting me to reflect on what I loved and how I could weave those joys into my daily life. It was about more than just bubble baths and face masks. It was an integral part of maintaining my mental and emotional equilibrium. Inspired, I decided to give crafting my self care routine the attention it deserved. The next day, I pulled out a notebook and began jotting down activities that brought me joy. Morning yoga in the warm glow of sunrise, quiet moments with a book that transported me to different worlds, and evenings spent journaling my thoughts and dreams. It was important to me that this routine felt tailored to my needs, not a replica of someone else's. As I mapped out my dream self care schedule, a strange anxiety bubbled up. What if I couldn't stick to it? What if life got in the way? My enthusiasm collided with self doubt, and I felt the familiar tug of insecurity. Yet I knew that even simply trying would be a step forward. With Zara's encouraging voice echoing in my mind, I pushed through that apprehension. Embracing the tension was an act of self love in itself. Thus began the journey of establishing my self care routine, filled with trial and error, laughter, and tears. I stumbled, I adapted, and at times I faltered. But each small victory felt monumental, marking my progress. I realized that self care is not a destination but a practice, ever evolving. There were days when the weight of procrastination pinned me down, but I learned to look for the silver linings. And with each setback came a newfound clarity. I began to understand that the most vital element of my routine was the understanding of what I needed in those moments of despair. Eventually, our conversations turned into a game of sharing tips and tricks. I found enjoyment in my mornings, waking up a little earlier each day to savor my rituals. With each passing week, I began to notice shifts in my perspective. My heart felt lighter and my mind clearer. I was slowly reclaiming pieces of myself that had been buried beneath the daily grind. Inspired by my routine, Zara started her own version, and we cheered for each other on our journeys. But amidst the growth, one thought shadowed my heart. Could I sustain this amid life's unpredictability? The tension hung in the air, like a note played and held on a piano, waiting to resolve. Self-care myths and realities. Self-care. Two simple words that pack a punch, right? They promise rejuvenation, relaxation, and a veritable renaissance of self-love. But what they often deliver is a series of myths that seem to have been conjured up by a committee that believes self-care equals long bubble baths, face masks, and perfectly arranged yoga mats. Imagine me, a well-meaning pseudo-yogi, attempting to embrace the concept, only to find that my bubble bath turned into a slippery nightmare that felt more like a low-budget horror film than a sanctuary of calm. Seriously, how do people manage to look so peaceful with a mountain of bubbles while I'm struggling not to pull a muscle just to retrieve my shampoo? Every splash felt like I was waging war against the universe, which suspiciously watched me from the bathroom door. Here's the thing. Self-care isn't a magazine cover moment. It's not about crafting the perfect photo op for Instagram or curating aesthetically pleasing rituals. It's more like embracing life's chaos, sometimes in your pajamas, with bits of popcorn in your hair, while you binge listen to that podcast you love. So, spoiler alert, bubble baths often lead to head-scratching revelations about how one's bath mat has become more of a slip and slide than sanitary bliss. Not to mention the subsequent struggle of trying to pop back up after sitting in hot water like a potato. But that's just part of the myth crushing roller coaster I rode during my self care journey. Another bizarre misconception is that self care requires copious amounts of time and, let's be honest, a fair bit of cash. Remember that time I scheduled a fancy facial that turned into a minor disaster because my skin decided to revolt? Not only did I look like a tomato, but I also left feeling more stressed about my skin than when I walked in. It's ironic how self care, in that moment, felt more like self sabotage. In reality, self care can be as simple as brewing a nice cup of tea, pulling a cozy blanket over yourself, and indulging in the guilty pleasure of that book you've been eyeing, or simply taking 5 minutes to breathe. Sometimes the best self care moments are tucked away in the mundane, the small acts of kindness we can offer ourselves amidst the chaos of daily life. As I ventured deeper into my self care expedition, I realized it's less about elaborate plans and more about tuning into what resonates with you. For instance, I've grown fond of those seemingly mundane moments, like watching the steam rise from my cup of tea while dreaming about what the universe has in store for me next. So there I was, blinds drawn, surrounded by a fortress of pillows, taking my time to sip the warmth and feeling the day's stresses melt away. No bubble bath required. Mind you, I still took the occasional bubble bath detour, but they morphed into spontaneous laughter fits rather than ritualistic escapes. In the end, self care isn't just a hot trend. It's about knowing yourself, your real self, not the Pinterest version you aspire to be. It's about acknowledging that it's okay to have bad days or less than glamorous self care moments. Real self care breaks through the shiny surface of those influencer driven ideals and enters the messy but beautiful realm of authenticity. So the next time I attempt a bubble bath, I'll laugh at my slippery predicament instead of letting it dampen my spirits. Yes, I may end up with soap in my eyes, but the joke's on me. I'll emerge just a tad wiser and perhaps just a little more slippery. Chapter 9: Embracing Change. The nature of change. Change, I've come to realize, is the only constant in life. As a child, I can vividly remember my mother rearranging the living room every spring. Each time it felt as if she was trying to resurrect the space and perhaps ourselves. I often resisted these changes, clinging to the comfort of familiarity, the old sofa in its usual spot, afraid of the unknown. It wasn't until I was older, standing in my first apartment surrounded by boxes, that I understood her instinct. Each shift in arrangement wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about renewal and growth. Transitions are often cloaked in uncertainty. When my partner and I decided to separate after 5 years, I felt as though the ground had been ripped out from under me. Nights turned into a blur of reflection. I grappled with feelings of fear and failure. After all, how could I have known that love could fade like an old photograph? Yet in working through my grief, I began to see the deeper layer of change, the kind that carves new paths. That moment, while painful, became a catalyst for self-discovery, leading me into a period of profound personal growth. Similarly, my job shifts over the years have taught me valuable lessons. The first layoff came like a thunderclap. I remember sitting cold and numb in my car, staring blankly at the steering wheel, grappling with the enormity of it all. Was it a failure on my part? Yet, as days passed, a slow ember of realization sparked within me. This was an opportunity. The world outside my window seemed vibrant and alive, beckoning me toward new possibilities. Over the years, I learned that while change often arrives uninvited, embracing it cultivates resilience, unveils new talents, and paves the way for happiness. As the experiences piled on, I recognized the inherent beauty of change. Not only does it challenge us, but it molds us, shaping who we are destined to become. But what happens when change presses in hard? It can feel relentless, unyielding. The trick I learned is to confront these moments head on rather than shrink back in fear. My mantra soon became, "What is this teaching me?" Each painful lesson opened my heart a little more, and slowly the tension receded. Yet some changes flashed bright and sudden, leaving me reeling. When my father fell ill, the weight of that change sank deep, precipitating a wave of loss that rippled through my very core. It taught me that change can also be intensely personal, encapsulating not just the physical transitions of life, but the emotional ones as well. The ache of acceptance was subtle, insistent, layering itself over time until I could find a semblance of peace. Now I see change as a dance. Sometimes it swirls me around wildly, while at other moments it allows me to lead. Each step taken during difficult transitions has taught me to harbor my hopes like sacred flames, unwavering even in the darkest nights. And now, as I pen these reflections, I contemplate the many ways change lies waiting at the threshold. It's a friendly specter, inviting us to open our hearts wide and leap into the unknown. Yes, there is tension in every moment of transformation, an exhilarating uncertainty. Yet what awaits us on the other side may just be the version of ourselves we were meant to become. Adapting with resilience, life has a way of throwing challenges at us when we least expect it. I remember sitting in a cafe, the scent of freshly brewed coffee swirling around me, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from my friend, Sarah, a simple line that read, "I lost my job today." In that moment, I felt the wave of uncertainty crash over her and me. It made me realize that resilience isn't just a word, it's a muscle we all need to strengthen. It's about learning to bend but not break, whether we're facing job loss, heartbreak, or any significant change. As I reflected on my own ups and downs, I recalled the time I was dumped after a 3-year relationship. I thought my world was ending. My best friends gathered around me, armed with ice cream and witty banter, helping me navigate through the hurt. But as chocolate fudge and laughter filled the air, they also brought perspective. "You have the power to redefine this moment," one said, and she was right. That painful breakup became a catalyst for growth. I learned to adapt, to invest time in self-discovery. Resilience wasn't just surviving, it became an invitation to evolve. As we continued to talk, I began to see resilience as a community-driven experience. Sarah, in her own struggle, decided to turn her job loss into an opportunity for a career shift. "What if I explore something entirely different?" she mused, bewildered but intrigued. Watching her embrace the unknown inspired me. We often think that resilience means keeping our heads down and pushing through alone, but in reality, it requires vulnerability and a willingness to seek support from others. In those tough moments, our connections can act as our safety nets, softening the fall and helping us find our footing. But just as we were basking in the warmth of shared stories and laughter, another challenge loomed. Sarah received an email, a rejection from yet another job she had applied for. The look on her face twisted my stomach. I felt that familiar surge of helplessness, wishing I could take away her pain. Then she stood up. "I can handle this," she stated, a newfound determination radiating from her. This was the heart of resilience I was learning, adapting, processing the hurt, and choosing to rise again, like the phoenix from its ashes. We all go through seasons of joy and sorrow, and sometimes, in our darkest hours, we find our greatest strength. Whenever I recount these experiences, I realize more and more that resilience isn't a straight path. It's messy, chaotic, and often unpredictable. Yet in this very unpredictability, we discover the magic of our adaptability. Together, we navigated those turbulent waters, drawing courage from one another, and slowly but surely, we found our way back to joy, even amidst adversity. As I look back now, I see the beauty of resilience and how it knits our experiences together, weaving a tapestry of strength and hope. Sometimes these life lessons come in the form of unexpected challenges. They shake us to our core, demanding growth that we never thought we could embrace. And just like that, in one cafe conversation with friends, I learned that the journey of resilience begins with our choices and our willingness to adapt. However, it also demands action, and the tension of uncertainty can often feel suffocating. As Sarah stared at her phone, the weight of rejection still heavy, I sensed a turning point looming on the horizon, a choice to transform despair into possibility. Before the night ended, I took a deep breath, resolved to remind her how far she'd already come and the strength she didn't yet see in herself. Besides, it's not about how many times we fall, but how many times we rise, right? The flickering candle at our table mirrored the small yet potent spark of hope waiting to ignite. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of an incredible journey, one where resilience would be our compass and joy our ultimate destination. Learning to thrive in uncertainty, life, in its beautiful chaos, has always been shrouded in uncertainty. I remember standing at a fork in the road not too long ago, unsure whether to pursue a new career path or cling to the safety of my comfort zone. My heart raced as I thought about the potential what ifs. What if I fail? What if I don't belong? What if I regret my choice? It was during these moments that the words of my life coach, Dr. Mark, echoed in my mind. Embrace the unknown. It's where the magic happens. His encouragement was infectious, almost like a gentle nudge pushing me to confront the fears that kept me stagnant. I realized that uncertainty was a universal experience. Everyone has faced those heart-stopping moments where the unknown looms large like a heavy fog. It dawned on me that thriving amidst uncertainty isn't just about weathering the storm, but learning to dance in the rain. Dr. Mark often emphasized the idea that every challenge brings with it a chance for growth, and my own experiences confirmed this truth in ways I had yet to uncover. As I began to reframe my perspective on uncertainty, I found myself facing the future with a curiosity I hadn't felt in years. The first step was acknowledging my feelings: fear, excitement, and even a dash of stubbornness. I found joy in the unpredictable twists and turns akin to a roller coaster ride. While I was terrified at times, I was also exhilarated. Moments of uncertainty sparked a resilience within me that I didn't know existed. Looking back, those were the very moments that defined who I was becoming, shaping my path forward in a way that certainty never could. The journey wasn't without its challenges, though. I remember a specific situation where a job opportunity that I thought was my golden ticket fell through. I felt the prick of disappointment deep in my gut, and I could hear my inner critic screaming, "See? You should have just played it safe." But Dr. Mark had taught me the value of reflection. In moments like that, it is essential to pause, breathe, and reassess. What did I want to learn from this? More importantly, how could I use this setback as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block? I decided to take a step back and redefine what success meant for me. It turned out that intertwining personal growth and joy was a more authentic measure of success than any job title. Rather than resenting the uncertainty, I started leaning into it. I began to view setbacks not as failures, but as opportunities. Each disappointment was a lesson waiting to be uncovered. With every passing day, I cultivated a mindset that welcomed change with open arms, ready to explore the myriad paths ahead. The tension of uncertainty still lingers in my life. It's a familiar companion that I've learned to navigate. There are still times when the fear creeps in, but I remind myself that beyond those fears lies the possibility of something beautiful. That's when I hear Dr. Mark's voice in my head again, encouraging me to immerse fully in the present, to savor the uncertainties and the adventures they promise. It's a reminder that the true essence of life unfolds in the spaces between certainty and doubt, painting a richer tapestry of experiences that I can draw upon as I continue to grow. As I sit here, reflecting on my journey thus far, I find myself brimming with gratitude, not just for the moments of clarity, but for the uncertainties that propelled me forward. The ability to thrive in these uncertain moments has become, paradoxically, one of my greatest certainties. I'm learning to embrace not just the bend in the road, but to revel in the journey. And that, my friend, is where the magic truly happens. Chapter 10: The Role of Nature in Happiness. Why nature matters. There's something intrinsically healing about stepping outside, where the sky meets the earth and where trees sway in the wind like old friends welcoming you home. On countless weekends spent hiking with friends and family, I've found that these moments in nature serve as a balm for the soul. Recollections of my camping trips with my brother Luke stand out vividly. The memory of us sprawled by the campfire, the scent of pine mingling with the smoke, and the stars glittering above like diamonds set against velvet are etched in my mind. Every shared laugh and whispered secret under the night sky reaffirmed our connection to the earth, transforming the mundane into something extraordinary. I began to realize that these experiences were not just adventures, but were integral to my happiness and well-being. Scientific studies back this instinctive understanding. Research shows that spending time in nature can reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. The greens of the forest and the blues of the ocean don't just please the eye. They promote a sense of calm, that can lift one's spirits dramatically. I often remember one fateful hike with Luke, a rugged trail winding through a dense forest. It was a day that nearly ended in disappointment when dark clouds rolled in, drenching us in an unexpected downpour. We sought refuge beneath a massive tree, laughter echoing as we huddled close. In that moment, our shared challenge felt invigorating rather than daunting, as if nature had conspired to deepen our bond. This wasn't just a playful memory, it was a lesson in resilience and joy, reminding us how nature can transform our perspective, not by changing our circumstances, but by changing how we react to them. But what strikes me most is how nature tends to force clarity into moments that often feel muddled in everyday life. Sitting by a mountain lake with Luke, our feet dangling off a rocky ledge, we watched the water shimmer under the midday sun, exchanging thoughts that felt more profound than usual. Those conversations drifted from childhood dreams to honest fears, wrapped in the tranquil embrace of the wilderness. Nature has a way of stripping away the superfluous, the incessant notifications and the blaring noise of our daily routines, leaving only what truly matters. And every time we head out, I feel an urge to share this truth with others, that alongside the tangible beauty, there's a transformative power in nature, a revelation that can shift our heart's compass. However, just as I was beginning to articulate these thoughts, it hit me. What if these precious moments in nature weren't guaranteed? The looming threat of climate change felt heavier on my chest with every hike I took. As I stood there by the shore, watching Luke skip stones across the surface, I thought of future generations. What if my children and their children would have to wrench nature from the clutches of technology and urbanization? The cherished landscapes that have offered me solace could become relics of an era past. This sharpened the tension within my narrative. We can't take our natural world for granted. It demands not just appreciation, but action. The weight of these thoughts lingered like the distant rumble of thunder on the horizon, urging me to shift from mere romanticism about nature to an active role in protecting it. This realization ignited a fire within me. What was once a simple appreciation for the outdoors had blossomed into a passionate advocacy for conservation. By sharing these experiences with others, I hope to inspire them to step into nature, to protect the very environments that nurture us. The tension between my desire for exploration and the reality of our ecological crisis became a driving force in my writing. It wasn't just about enjoying nature anymore. It was about ensuring that future generations could forge the same deep connections with the earth. Because after all, every hike, every camping trip, every moment spent under those infinite stars reinforces one ultimate truth. Nature matters now more than ever. Connecting with the outdoors. As a child, I spent countless summer afternoons nestled under the sprawling branches of an ancient oak tree, the sunlight filtering through the leaves like liquid gold. My best friend, Mia, and I would whisper secrets and plan imaginary adventures, our laughter echoing in the gentle rustle of the breeze. Those carefree moments ignited my love for the outdoors, a passion that ebbed and flowed with the years, whispering at times and shouting at others. Today, as the world seems to accelerate into a frenetic pace, I find it essential to reconnect and revive those moments in nature, and I'm eager to share how you can too. The beauty of the outdoors isn't locked away behind the doors of a national park. It's nestled in our everyday lives, waiting for us to discover it once again. Simple activities like a leisurely stroll through a neighborhood park, an afternoon of gardening, or a picnic in the backyard hold immense potential for forging a deeper connection with nature. These outings don't require extensive planning or elaborate travel. They invite spontaneity, a reminder that sometimes the simplest experiences offer the most profound joy. I remember one balmy summer evening, gathering a group of friends for an impromptu picnic. We spread out a checkered blanket on the grass, tossed around a frisbee, and shared stories as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and lavender. It is these shared experiences that not only draw us closer to nature, but also strengthen the bonds we have with each other. In a world where screens often dominate our attention, stepping outside can be a radical act of reclaiming our time and presence. I've found that organizing group outings, whether it's a hike, a small beach cleanup, or a stargazing night creates an atmosphere of camaraderie that fills our hearts with memories and laughter. However, as the days grow shorter and the chill of autumn begins to bite, I find myself reflecting on the urgency to savor these moments now. The more we engage with the outdoors, the clearer it becomes that our relationship with nature is symbiotic. Just as we benefit from the tranquility it offers, our natural world thrives when we engage with it, remindful of our responsibility to protect and cherish it. The thrill of discovery awaits us at every turn, on a walk through a winding forest path, in the serenity of a quiet lake, or even in the hum of the city's gardens. I recall a visit to the nearby botanical garden with my friends last spring. We meandered through the vibrant blooms, the air sweet with the scent of lilacs and roses. We challenged each other to find the most colorful or unusual flower, snapping pictures to capture those fleeting moments of beauty. It was a nostalgic echo of our childhood games, but infusing them with a newfound appreciation for nature's artistry. Yet, as I plunged into the joy of these activities, I couldn't shake off a growing concern. Time seemed to slip through our fingers, and suddenly autumn was approaching with a swiftness that felt almost alarming. Would our moments in nature dwindle as the days grew colder? Or would we double down, creating heartwarming rituals that embrace the changing seasons? As I dived deeper into the significance of being outdoors, I uncovered studies that reveal the science behind nature's inexplicable power to calm our anxieties and enhance our overall well-being. The proverbial nature bath, spending time surrounded by greenery, has been shown to reduce stress and improve mood. Armed with this knowledge and invigorated by my experiences, I knew I had to advocate for these connections. It became clear that we couldn't allow that elusive spark to dim as summer slipped away. We had to fight the urge to retreat indoors, to plan our outings even as the leaves began to turn. And so, I began crafting a series of weekend adventures, each designed to celebrate the spirit of the outdoors, diving headfirst into the joyous unpredictability that awaited us. This season, I wanted to envelop my friends in an autumnal embrace, chasing the vibrant foliage and crisp air before winter set its icy grip. But as I coordinated the first outing, an expansive hike through a local forest trail, I felt a pang of trepidation. Would everyone be as eager to embrace this connection? Could I ignite that same spark I once felt as a child? The evening before our hike, I could barely sleep, the thrill and worry intermingling like leaves caught in a gust of wind. But deep down, I knew that potentially painful moments like this were merely the prelude to something rewarding, the chance for all of us to rediscover the wonders of connecting with the outdoors before it was too late. Nature Therapy Experience. As I stepped out of my car and into the embrace of the sprawling forest, a wave of tranquility washed over me. I had arrived at the guided nature retreat, a place where I hoped to find solace from the chaos of everyday life. The air was rich with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the soothing rustle of leaves stirred in the gentle breeze. With each step away from the familiar concrete and noise, I felt a subtle unraveling of tension in my shoulders. I was eager to dive into this journey of nature therapy, yet part of me remained skeptical. Could spending time outdoors really reshape my mental landscape? The first day was designed to introduce us to the concept of nature therapy, alongside a small group of other participants, each carrying their own stories and struggles. We gathered in a clearing, encircled by towering trees that seemed to stand sentinel over our shared experience. Our guide, a warm-hearted woman named Claire, spoke passionately about the therapeutic effects of being in nature. She explained how studies revealed that spending time outdoors could lower stress levels, boost mood, and enhance overall mental well-being. I listened intently, intrigued yet still holding on to a thread of doubt. As our small group embarked on a forest walk, my senses were awakened. The cool breeze kissed my skin, the sunlight glinted through the leaves like scattered jewels, and the vibrant chatter of birds began to drown out the mental noise that had been my constant companion. As we walked deeper into the woods, something began to shift inside me. I found myself opening up to the sights, sounds, and smells around me. I picked up a smooth stone, feeling its weight in my palm, a reminder of nature's simplicity amid life's complexities. When we paused to meditate beside a babbling brook, I let go of the tightness in my chest. Claire encouraged us to listen to the water singing over rocks, to the wind whispering through branches. I felt moments of alignment where nature felt like a metaphor for my own chaotic existence, flowing effortlessly yet steadfastly forward. But all was not as tranquil as it seemed. As the sun dipped lower on our second day, the group faced a challenge that threatened to unravel this newfound peace we were cultivating. I could sense the tension rise, an unseen heaviness cloaking the previously light atmosphere. It began with Josh, a quiet participant who had seemed withdrawn from the very start. During a group reflection, his vulnerability surfaced, and he expressed his fear of opening up to others, fearing judgment and rejection. As his words hung heavy in the air, a ripple of discomfort passed through the group. We were all on this journey for healing, and yet here was a reminder of how deeply entrenched our insecurities can be. I watched as he wrestled with his emotions, his hands trembling slightly. Claire guided us through a supportive dialogue, but the fragment of fear had already settled into our gathering like an unexpected storm. I felt a mix of urgency and protectiveness rise within me. In that moment, our collective experience hung in the balance. Could we reach out, connect, and support one another, allowing us all to break through? Or would the weight of our vulnerabilities deter us from creating a safe space? The choice loomed ahead, and it felt pivotal. Chapter 11: Finding Joy in Everyday Moments. The beauty of the ordinary. There's a certain kind of magic that lies in the silence of everyday moments, an unremarkable nook of time where I often find myself lost in thoughts while simply watching the sun dip below the horizon. My partner Jake and I have a ritual of sharing these sunsets, our silhouettes framed by the warm hues of fading daylight. It's in those moments that I realize beauty isn't always about grand gestures or breathtaking landscapes. Sometimes it's in the quietude of a familiar spot, the laughter of a loved one, or the whisper of a gentle breeze. Last week, as we settled into our favorite corner by the window, the world outside began to transform. The sky shifted from a soft blue to a thrilling tapestry of oranges and pinks, each color blending into the next like an artist's brushstrokes. I caught Jake smiling at the sight. It wasn't the sunset that made it beautiful, but the connection we shared in that fragment of time. We stood hand in hand, allowing the moment to wash over us. My heart echoed with gratitude as I took a mental snapshot, knowing that this ordinary evening was a treasure tucked away in my memory. Mindfulness is the key that unlocks the beauty in the ordinary. It encourages us to slow down, breathe deeply, and truly savor each passing moment. Often, I find myself caught up in a whirlwind of tasks, deadlines, and distractions. But when I remember to breathe, the most mundane activities can become extraordinary. Whether it's the smell of freshly brewed coffee in the morning or the sound of rain tapping against the window, each sensory detail provides an opportunity for appreciation and calm. As I've walked through life with Jake, I've learned that joy can be found even in the simplest of routines. But I can't help but feel a growing worry about how easy it is to let these moments slip away unnoticed. Last Wednesday, after an exhausting day at work, I came home and found Jake sitting on the patio, an unopened bottle of wine beside him. He beckoned me outside, where we watched the sun preparing to set, its slow descent a poignant reminder of life's fleetingness. Yet as lovely as it was, a heaviness settled in my chest. A shadow of doubt loomed as thoughts of our daily hustle clouded the scene. Would we always remember to prioritize these moments? Was I turning into someone who scarcely acknowledged the smallest joys? As the evening drew on, I realized that these small rituals were what tethered us to happiness. But still, a knot twisted in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that we might one day forget. The frantic pace of life might overshadow the gentle beauty we had worked so hard to cultivate. I fought against the rising tide of apprehension, yet an urgent question lingered. How could I ensure we remained grounded in the ordinary, even as life rushed by? Silence enveloped us, yet the tension between my worries and the comforting colors of the sunset created a need to explore deeper what it meant to truly appreciate the beauty of the ordinary. Mindful rituals for daily joy. Every morning, as I fought the familiar battle of getting out of bed, I found an unexpected savior in an age-old practice, the simple ritual of brewing tea. It began on a winter morning when the frost clung stubbornly to the window panes, blurring my view. Sitting at the kitchen table, I decided to embrace the art of tea brewing, not as a hurried task, but as an extended moment to ground myself. The gentle steam curling from the kettle became a calming visual, almost like a mantra. I could hear the murmurs of water reaching its boiling point, a soft crescendo that echoed my thoughts. With each tea leaf unfolding, I embraced joy in the mundane, savoring the smell, the textures, even the quiet lapse of time before the first sip. This daily ceremony became my sacred ritual, a way to cultivate joy amidst life's chaos. As weeks turned into months, I started to invite friends over for these tea ceremonies. Each person brought a different viewpoint, a new story, and the table transformed into a canvas of laughter, heart to heart conversations, and shared silences. We discovered that the simple act of brewing tea together became a mirror showing us the beauty in pause, a reminder of how mindfulness could stitch warmth into the fabric of our busy lives. Listening intently as stories unfolded, I realized I was not just drinking tea. I was weaving connections, rediscovering the joy of shared experiences amidst life's incessant hurry. Then came a particularly chaotic week at work, a project deadline looming with the weight of the world on my shoulders. Anxiety gnawed at my insides, and I struggled to keep my mind from spiraling. One afternoon, I decided to step outside for fresh air. I found a quiet corner in the garden and focused on my breath, inhaling deep through my nose and exhaling slowly. With each breath, I pictured my worries drifting away, like leaves on a serene pond. I whispered a silent affirmation of grounding and released my expectations for perfection. That brief escape brought clarity and lightness. The contrast of the stress eating away at my joy against the tranquil moments of mindful breathing made me appreciate just how much I could cultivate joy in even the hardest spaces. As I returned to my desk, I felt renewed strength to face the challenges ahead. These experiences ignited a spark in me. I began to develop a repertoire of mindful rituals that enriched my daily life, a playful mix of breath work, nature walks, and meditation pauses between tasks. I experimented, sometimes failing to stick to one, but in each attempt, I found a renewed understanding of myself. It dawned on me that joy wasn't a destination, but rather a collection of moments stitched together with intention. The realization began to resonate. If I could kindle joy in my life with simple, mindful practices, so could anyone else. But just as I was reveling in the newfound clarity, I faced a unique dilemma. The busyness of life returned to overshadow my daily rituals. Invitations to events and weekend commitments crept in, inching my cherished mindfulness practices to the sidelines. I was losing grip over the joy I had cultivated. As I groaned under the weight of obligations, I knew I needed to reclaim my narrative. I found myself at a crossroads, contemplating whether joy was worth the effort or if I should conform to the relentless demands of life as they come. Would I let the clutter of the external world suffocate my inner calm? My heart raced as I contemplated this crucial decision. Should I sacrifice moments of joy for those fleeting opportunities of social affirmation, or could I carve out pockets of mindful time even in the busiest of weeks? This tension loomed heavily, yet I felt a burgeoning resolve to explore the answer as a new chapter in my quest for daily joy began to unfold. Celebrating small wins. Life is an ongoing series of moments, some grand, others astonishingly mundane. Yet amidst this endless stream, I've come to discover something profound: the importance of acknowledging and celebrating small victories. It started on a day that felt ordinary, a day when my coffee cup was half full and my to-do list was as long as the Nile. As I sat at my desk, overwhelmed by overwhelming tasks, it struck me how easy it is to gloss over the small wins that pepper our lives, like confetti at a parade, just waiting to be noticed. Let me take you back to a time not long ago. I was tucked into my favorite cafe, the smell of roasted beans swirling in the air. I had set myself a lofty goal to write my first novel. Now, this was no small endeavor, and I found myself getting bogged down by the enormity of it all. My frustration mounted with every blank page until one afternoon I jotted down just a single sentence. One sentence. It seemed pitiful, yet at that moment I felt a spark, a small win I had been entirely discounting. That single sentence became a cornerstone. I began to celebrate these small victories. I handed myself a sticker for every paragraph completed, creating a collection of colorful reminders of what I'd achieved. The emojis in my phone's notes became my cheerleaders. And soon, unaided by the burden of my unattainable goal, I realized that celebrating these small wins charged my spirit with motivation. I made it a point to recognize moments of progress, however small they might be. Research backs this up. Studies have shown that acknowledging small successes activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine and making us feel good about what we've accomplished. It encourages us to keep moving forward, no matter how daunting the task at hand may seem. I started sharing my small victories with friends over coffee. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and it created an unspoken contract between us to celebrate each other's victories, big or small. Something remarkable began to happen. As each of us shared, we inspired one another to keep pushing, to strive for more. However, not every moment of celebration is smooth sailing. There were days when I felt exhausted, days when self-doubt crept in like a thief in the night. It was during these moments that I stumbled upon one of the most powerful aspects of celebrating small wins. It helps combat negative feelings and self-doubt. A few months in, I encountered a daunting plateau where progress felt painfully sluggish. It was during these dark hours that I clung tightly to writing down my smallest of accomplishments, like a lifeline keeping me afloat in stormy seas. What I thought was a stall turned out to be a necessary pause for reflection. As I journeyed deeper into this practice, I faced the reality that our culture often overlooks these small victories, rushing instead toward the larger achievements, the headlines, and the glittering accolades. But as I navigated this landscape, I found that what mattered most weren't just the big dreams, but the small steps leading there. I learned to take myself on a little date every week, where I would treat myself to a cupcake or a cozy evening of reading, a tangible acknowledgement of my growth. But to celebrate alone felt incomplete. Therefore, I decided to host a small gathering, a victory party. Inviting friends over, we each shared our small wins, from getting out of bed during tough days to finishing a tricky project at work. Laughing and reflecting over homemade finger foods, I recognized that my struggles mirrored those of others. With every shared victory, I felt the joy ripple through the room, transforming what could have been a simple evening into a celebration of resilience. As I type these words, I feel a resurgence of warmth at the thought of each moment that led me here. Celebrating small wins is not merely a strategy, it's a profound appreciation for the journey itself. Yet the weight of the industry we live in often pushes us toward the finish line, tainting our view of progress. In the grand scheme of the novel I continue to write, the grand reveal is coming, but I can't help feel that the real story lies woven intricately within every small win, each serving as the thread that holds my tapestry of progress together. However, here's where the tension mounts. What happens when the bigger wins come, those milestones we so eagerly anticipate? How will we ensure we don't treat them as mere checkpoints rather than celebrations of everything we've previously accomplished? This question keeps me up at night, provoking a gentle tug in my spirit to rethink how I value both grand and petite victories. But what I know is this: as I inch closer to those moments, I will continue to embrace the small wins with arms wide open, each one deserving its own dance of recognition. Chapter 12: Creative Expression and Happiness. The joy of creativity. There's a thrill that courses through me whenever I sit down with a blank canvas, whether it's a stretch of paper or a glowing digital screen. The anticipation is electrifying. It's like standing on the threshold of a roller coaster, holding on to the safety bar with both hands, heart racing in sync with the click, click, click of the ascent. That moment before you dive into the creative realm is palpable. Anything feels possible, and the weight of infinite choices is exhilarating. But as much as I adore this sensation, it's always accompanied by an equal measure of fear, the fear that I might not measure up to the vision twirling in my mind. It's a conflicting dance that every creator knows well, and it's the foundation of our joy. Reflecting on my journey, I often remember a time when my creativity felt stifled by doubt, like an iron cage around my imagination. I was in my late 20s, caught in the monotonous grind of a 9 to 5 that drained my spirit. Each day blurred into the next, creativity fading into the background like an old photograph. But then, a simple evening ritual changed everything. I started an art journal. I didn't aim for masterpieces, rather, I played with colors, words, and imperfections. That small act ignited a flicker of freedom within me. Each page was a release, a reminder that creativity is not about perfection, but about expression. That journal became a diary of my soul, a place where I could explore the whimsical and the profound without the weight of judgment. And in that exploration, I found not just solace, but joy. Recently, I stumbled upon a study that echoed my own experiences. Researchers found that engaging in creative activities can significantly enhance mental well being. The act of creating, whether through painting, writing, or even gardening, releases dopamine, that wonderful chemical that boosts mood and fosters a sense of accomplishment. It's fascinating to think that by simply allowing myself to create, I wasn't just escaping the mundane, I was actively nurturing my mental health. That's the joy of creativity. It can transform our lives without us even realizing it. Yet, as I dive deeper into this, I can't help but wonder, what if that joy comes with a price? What if, in pursuit of creativity, we accidentally drown ourselves in the chase for validation? As I uncover more stories, both from personal experience and from others, I find my heart racing, not just from inspiration, but from the tension that underlies the world of creativity. Most recently, I attended a local art exhibition featuring talented but unknown artists. The gallery buzzed with excitement, each piece a brave declaration of passion. I listened intently to whispers of admiration, but also of doubt. Someone remarked, "It's beautiful, but I could never do that." Their words hung in the air, thick with longing and insecurity. I realized then the double-edged nature of creativity. It captivates and isolates, drawing us in while pushing us away. I recalled my own journey filled with moments of doubt and hesitation. I watched brilliant works being celebrated, admired, yet felt a pang of jealousy laced with inspiration. It made me question, why does the joy of creating often come hand in hand with fear of inadequacy? That tension, that dichotomy, kneaded itself into the fabric of every conversation and thought. Maybe there is joy in acceptance too, acknowledging that every creation, regardless of its perceived success, is valid and important. As I left the gallery, I felt an urgency within me to embrace that tension, to continue creating despite the fear. With every brushstroke, every written word, I am reminded that the process, not the product, is what truly matters. And so I sit here now, pen in hand, ready to plunge back into my own chaotic whirlpool of creativity. Despite the looming specter of doubt, I can hear the whisperings of joy beckoning me. I almost taste the sweet freedom of expression that lies ahead, but I know the deeper truth that haunts the corner of my mind. In this beautiful, messy journey of creativity, maybe the greatest tension of all is the realization that joy doesn't always feel joyful. Sometimes it feels like wrestling with the shadows of our self-doubt. Finding your creative outlet. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon when I first sat down to confront the chaos in my mind. The thrum of the raindrops against my window was oddly soothing, but in a way, it magnified the restlessness I had been feeling. A nagging sense of dissatisfaction had crept into my life like a silent thief. I had often found myself asking, what am I meant for? What truly excites me? That afternoon, with a cup of tea cooling beside me, I began my quest to find my creative outlet, the thing that would ignite passion in the mundane, and in doing so, perhaps allow me to uncover more about myself. Through discussions with friends and late-night scrolls on social media, I quickly learned that a creative outlet is not just for artists or writers. It's for anyone wanting to express themselves, to take a break from the everyday grind. Perhaps you're like me, feeling boxed in by responsibilities or societal expectations. I found inspiration in the stories of others. My friend who discovered pottery and found peace in molding clay, another who channeled frustration into dance. This led me to reflect on my childhood, the sketches, the melodies that once flowed effortlessly from me. Somewhere along the way, life had silenced those joys. I wanted to rediscover that magic. With a determined heart, I decided to try a little bit of everything. I signed up for a painting class, hired a local musician to teach me guitar, and even dabbled in creative writing workshops. Each experience unraveled new layers, revealing the parts of myself I thought were long gone. I accidentally spilled paint on my favorite jeans during the first class, a disaster, I thought at the time. Yet it became a story to share. By the end of that week, I was realizing that creativity wasn't a solitary endeavor, it was a community. Sharing failures and victories with fellow budding artists became a source of encouragement. I began learning not just about my interests, but also the beauty of vulnerability. But as I delved deeper, I was confronted by a nagging feeling that there was something more, something that felt just out of reach. As I sat down in front of a blank canvas one evening, I felt a rush of frustration. I had attended all the classes and gathered all these wonderful experiences, yet I still felt disconnected, like I was playing dress up in someone else's story. The tension rose, it was palpable. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and let the colors swirl in my mind. In that moment, I realized something profound. Finding a creative outlet was not just about the act itself. It was about uncovering who I truly was, beneath the layers of expectations and self-doubt. As the clock ticked toward midnight, the room began to transform, shadows playing tricks on my contemplative thoughts. Could I let go enough to express my true self? Was I ready for that leap? And most importantly, was I willing to face whatever that revelation might unveil? Art as a therapeutic tool. It was one of those drizzly afternoons when the gray clouds hung low, mirroring the heaviness in my chest. I stared at the blank canvas sitting on the easel, a silent challenge mocking me. My therapist had recommended bringing art into my healing process, suggesting it as a way to give shape to the feelings I couldn't express. Just paint without thinking too much, she had said. But those words felt like an impossible invitation, especially given my tendency to overanalyze everything. As I picked up my paintbrush, I recalled my first genuine encounter with art. It was at a small gallery in town, where vivid colors danced against stark white walls. A woman, lost in her creation, was pouring out emotions onto her canvas in a flurry of color and movement. I was entranced, not because of the artwork itself, but because of the freedom that she exuded. That day, I began to understand not just art, but the potential it held as both a mirror and a release for our innermost feelings. So there I stood, brush trembling in hand, reminiscing about that pivotal moment. I let the bristles touch the canvas, and suddenly, it felt less like an exercise in futility and more like an invitation to explore the depths of my own psyche. The colors flowed, ochre, cobalt, crimson, as if they were echoing the turmoil I felt inside. All at once, a surge of emotion washed over me, and I understood what my therapist meant about letting art speak for you. Each stroke became a silent scream, a whisper, a secret held too long. The canvas wasn't simply receiving paint, it was absorbing my essence. It was exhilarating and frightening. I could feel a crescendo building inside me, a tension that sought an escape. As I splashed a rich indigo onto the canvas, the tension shifted, revealing itself to be a mix of relief and vulnerability. This was more than just a painting. It was shedding layers I didn't even know I'd been carrying. But then, a sudden hesitation. What if I let too much out? What if I revealed too much of myself, exposed my scars with nowhere to hide? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but the brush in my hand felt like an anchor as I accidentally painted over an area too dark. It resembled a storm cloud, and for a moment, the weight of it paralyzed me. I took a breath and decided to push through. What is this really? I asked myself. Is it fear or freedom? The canvas responded as I layered more colors, each application acting as both a protective shield and a revelation. The lines I drew were shaky, yet assertive, embodying both the chaos and the joy of creation. This simple act of painting had morphed into something sacred, something transformative. Just then, the door creaked open, and my therapist peeked in, a knowing smile on her face. I felt naked under her gaze, entirely exposed, yet in that moment, I realized I didn't have to hide. Keep going, she encouraged softly. Let it out. Her words cascaded over me, and I resumed painting with a fervor I hadn't known I possessed. In that studio, among brushes and spilled paint, I discovered a raw connection to myself I had long buried under layers of pretense. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself standing still. staring at my creation, no longer blank, but far from resolved. Something still lurked beneath, an anxious energy buzzing just below the surface, begging for acknowledgement. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was not done yet. My heart raced as I dipped my brush into black, contemplating the unleashing of my deepest shadows. Was I ready for that? Suddenly, the mere act of painting became a dance with fear itself. The bleakness I felt creeping in with each dark stroke, conjuring up memories I thought I'd neatly tucked away. Chapter 13: The Financial Factor. Money and Happiness. The Connection. It was a rainy Wednesday afternoon when I found myself wandering through the aisles of a local thrift store. The scent of old books and worn-out furniture filled the air, mingling with the distant sound of raindrops dancing against the storefront windows. As I sifted through the discarded treasures, I couldn't help but reflect on my own journey with money and happiness. After all, what began as an innocent quest for unique decor turned into a profound exploration of our society's complex relationship with wealth and fulfillment. Growing up, my family instilled in me the belief that money could buy happiness. I remember my mother often saying, "If only we had a little more, everything would be easier." This mantra became embedded in my mind like a comforting but misleading blanket. On one hand, I understand the practicality of money. It pays for necessities, opens doors, and fuels dreams. Yet I also witnessed just how fleeting happiness can be, often tied not to the amount in our bank accounts, but to the richness of our experiences. In college, the hunger for knowledge clashed with the hunger for student loans. I took on part-time jobs, balancing textbooks with receipts, and each paycheck seemed to bring a paradoxical mix of relief and anxiety. For every meal I saved on ramen noodles, there was a week when the stress over bills would steal my sleep. My peers and I discussed our financial woes candidly, yet I noticed an interesting trend. Those who chose purpose-driven paths, teaching, social work, often radiated a sense of fulfillment that seemed impervious to their meager salaries. This sparked a question that would linger in my mind. Could happiness exist independently of money? Years later, as I settled into a career that promised stability, I told myself I had made it. But the relentless pursuit of promotions and raises slowly chipped away at my well-being. I found myself trapped in a cycle of wanting more success, more stuff, more recognition. I soon realized that while my paycheck had grown, my happiness had waned. Wasn't happiness supposed to be a product of my efforts? The glossy magazine covers painted a picture of the wealthy living their best lives, indulging in lavish vacations and designer clothes. Yet allure began to fade as I explored the lives of those who seemed genuinely content and fulfilled without those trappings. As I buried myself in research, a curious pattern emerged. Studies consistently suggested that after reaching a certain threshold, enough to cover basic needs and provide a bit of comfort, additional income brought diminishing returns on happiness. The idea resonated deeply. Maybe it wasn't money that made us happy. Maybe it was the way we used it. Was I investing in experiences, relationships, and personal growth, or was I merely accumulating things? This thought lingered as I revisited the thrift store week after week, discovering unexpected joys in the stories held within those forgotten items. Each unique piece sparked creativity and imagination, reminding me of simpler times. I started investing not just in material things, but experiences. I traded my evenings spent at work for nights spent laughing with friends, sharing traditional meals, and nurturing connections. I began to measure my wealth not by my bank balance, but by my ability to create lasting memories. Then, one day, as the sun peeked through the clouds, I encountered an elderly man sitting outside the thrift store. He was clad in a bright cardigan, and a smile broken only by the sun lines on his face. He struck up a conversation with me about the treasures he'd found over the years and how they filled his home with warmth far more valuable than silver or gold. His eyes sparkled as he regaled me with tales not of how much he had earned, but of the community he built around shared stories and laughter. It was in that moment, surrounded by the remnants of forgotten lives, that I felt a profound shift. The man's joy didn't stem from unwavering, hefty bank accounts. It was woven into his relationships, his memories, and even in the way he gave back to his community. Money, I realized, was merely a tool, a means to foster connection and joy, or a weight that burdened us with expectations and isolation. But just as I began to fully grasp this connection, an unsettling thought dashed through my mind. Had I been too quick to dismiss the importance of financial security? Would the pursuit of happiness ultimately lead me astray, away from a balanced life? As much as I'd like to fill my life with experiences, I couldn't ignore the necessity of practicality. The tension brewed within me, a grapple between ideals and reality. Where did that leave me, standing amidst a clash of values, with happiness seeming just out of reach? Prioritizing experiences over things. There was a time in my life when every birthday, holiday, or special occasion would see me receiving yet another gadget, another piece of clothing I didn't really need, or a decorative item meant to impress. I remember sitting on my bed, surrounded by unopened boxes, feeling a mix of excitement and emptiness. The thrill of new things faded faster than I could ever anticipate, and I began to realize that I was chasing dust rather than joy. One summer evening, as I sorted through my belongings, an exercise I had not fully embraced before, I stumbled across a crumpled ticket tucked between the pages of a forgotten book. It was from a concert I had attended a couple of years prior, the thrill of the music still echoing in my mind. It was a night filled with laughter, connection, and a sense of freedom that a new pair of shoes could never replicate. I recalled the taste of the overpriced popcorn, the scent of warm pretzels, and how we danced under fading lights, strangers becoming friends, if only for a moment. That evening became a milestone in my mind, a pivot point that gradually altered my relationship with material possessions. This experience led me down a path of reflection about what truly mattered in life. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Experiences had a uniqueness and a depth that physical possessions simply could not match. I began to seek out opportunities for adventures with friends and family. A weekend road trip to the coast took precedence over shopping sprees, and instead of acquiring the latest smartphone, I invested in cooking classes that filled my kitchen with laughter and delicious aromas. Each experience was a story, a thread woven into the fabric of my existence, while the things continued to fade, gather dust, and lose meaning. But the shift wasn't without its challenges. There were moments when I experienced guilt, the societal pressure mounted by friends who still prized things over experiences. "Why don't you get that new gadget? It's the best one on the market," they would say. The initial pang of envy crept in, but I'd remind myself of the laughter shared on those trips, the intimate talks during late-night drives, and the joy of making memories instead of merely collecting them. As the tensions between my old habits and new commitments flared, I learned an essential truth. Choosing experiences was not merely a personal preference, but a conscious rebellion against the culture of consumerism. By embracing this philosophy, my relationships began to deepen and my perspective broadening. Friends became companions in adventures instead of mere acquaintances on social media. I found myself making plans that prioritized connection over consumption. A potluck dinner replaced a fancy restaurant, and hiking trips became our way of celebrating milestones. Memories layered upon each other, rich in texture and detail, danced before my eyes, providing a tapestry of a life fully lived. Yet, the fear of missing out remained persistent. As I sat with my friends one evening, I could see them scrolling through their phones in between bites of homemade lasagna, sharing snippets of someone else's glamorous life. It gnawed at me, an insistent voice whispering anxiety about my choices. Were they right? Was I missing out on something essential? That evening, tension crackled in the air as we tried to discuss plans for an upcoming weekend while balancing the contrasting pull of material satisfaction and relational fulfillment. I caught myself feeling torn, and in that moment, I understood that the shift wasn't merely in making different choices. It was about shedding layers of misunderstanding about what it meant to find fulfillment. As I pondered this conflict, I realized it was time to confront it directly. I took a deep breath, setting aside my worries, and shared my thoughts with the group. They paused, phones lowered, curious. Little did I know, my vulnerability would open the floodgates to a profound discussion about our aspirations, fears, and desires. As the night deepened, Laughter and ideas flowed freely, switching the conversation from fleeting likes to longing for connection. And just like that, I felt the tension release, replaced by a collective awareness that experiences, not things, were the true treasures of life. Together, we made a pact. Our next gathering would focus on adventures instead of acquisitions. As I left that night, I felt lighter, no longer imprisoned by the weight of choices that once brought me confusion. Budgeting for joy. As I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by the remnants of last night's takeout and a stack of unpaid bills, I realized that my relationship with money had become a source of anxiety rather than joy. I had always thought of budgeting as a way to restrict my life, to focus on what I couldn't have instead of what I truly wanted. But something within me shifted that day, ignited by a tiny spark of inspiration. What if I could budget for joy? With a pen in hand and a cup of steaming tea beside me, I dived into the concept of creating a budget that didn't center around sacrifice, but rather around the things that filled my heart with happiness. The idea was simple. Track my spending, yes, but allocate funds not just for bills and essentials, but for experiences, passions, and moments that brought me genuine joy. It was exhilarating, flipping the narrative on its head. I started dreaming about my joy budget. The first step was straightforward but required honesty. I began jotting down the things in life that made my heart sing: spontaneous coffee dates with friends, weekend hikes, art supplies for my latest watercolor project, or even that long planned trip to the beach. Each item was not just a to do on a list, they represented opportunities for joy, laughter, and connection. Knowing that I could weave these elements into my financial plan was a revelation. It seemed utterly luxurious to me, yet so profoundly necessary. However, the real challenge lay not just in envisioning this new approach, but in implementing it. I spent the next week tracking my expenses, analyzing where my money really went. The results were eye-opening. A significant portion had disappeared into subscription services I rarely used and spontaneous takeout orders. Sifting through those entries felt like embarking on a scavenger hunt, uncovering hidden habits that had slowly drained my wallet and my spirit. But there was hope. With every realization came the awareness of changes I could make. That weekend, I sat down again, armed with my newfound knowledge, ready to create my first joy-filled budget. I allocated a modest but intentional sum to each category of joy: dining out with friends, pursuing hobbies, and even self-care. I felt my heart racing as I labeled these budget sections joy instead of miscellaneous or guilty indulgences. This was a celebration. But as the numbers crunched in my mind, I felt a wave of unease. Could I actually stick to this? Would the fear of overspending overshadow the joy of spending? As I wrestled with the inner conflict of freedom versus responsibility, the clock ticked away, echoing my hopes and fears. The stakes felt high. Could I truly balance embracing joy and practicing moderation? Just as I began to feel overwhelmed by the weight of those questions, I realized that this journey was about more than just numbers. It was about transforming my entire mindset. My budget wasn't merely a limitation, it was a guiding framework for living a fulfilling life. And perhaps that was the key to finding joy amidst the chaos of adulthood. But as the month unfolded, so did the unexpected. My first joy purchase, a ticket to a local art exhibit, felt rich with promise. Yet, as I entered the venue, soaking in the vivid displays of creativity, I noticed my anxiety lurking in the shadows. The specter of self-doubt whispered, "What if you overspend this month?" It threw me off balance, causing a flicker of tension that reminded me this was more than just a financial experiment. It was about self-discovery and redefining what it meant to embrace happiness. When I walked out of that gallery, my heart was light yet conflicted, a bittersweet moment that had taught me a crucial lesson. Joy was a journey, not a destination. Balancing excitement with caution felt like walking a tightrope, thrilling and terrifying at once. The urge to scroll through past spending haunted me like a wild animal, yet the exhilarating prospect of more joyful experiences beckoned from the horizon. With the end of the month approaching, I faced an all too familiar dilemma. Would I find the courage to embrace my new path, or would the fear of falling short chase me away from the life I desperately desired? The tension was palpable, and as I flipped through my budget, I felt the weight of the decision pressing down. This was just the beginning, I reminded myself, and every decision would take me one step closer to a life defined by joy, not by fear. Chapter 14: Spreading Happiness, the Ripple Effect, the Joy of Helping Others. It was a brisk Saturday morning when I found myself wandering through the local farmer's market, the air rich with the scent of fresh produce and baked goods. The sun played hide and seek behind drifting clouds, and a light breeze danced through the stalls, stealing away the warmth of the day. I wasn't there looking for anything in particular. I just loved the vibrancy of the market, the laughter of children, the chatter of neighbors, and the steady hum of life unfolding around me. But this day held a different purpose, one that would shape my perspective on giving and fulfillment. As I strolled past colorful arrays of fruits and vegetables, my eye caught a frail elderly woman struggling to lift a basket of apples. Her frail fingers fumbled with the handle, and for a moment I hesitated. It's so easy to remain an onlooker, isn't it? We like to think that our intentions are good. Perhaps I could help if I just had the time. But then, with a burst of resolve, I approached her. "Can I help you with that?" I asked, my voice steady despite the nagging fear of rejection. Her eyes lit up with surprise, and I could feel joy sprout in my chest as I took the basket from her, sensing the warmth of gratitude radiate from her smile. In that moment, I was reminded of something I had read, perhaps on a motivational blog or in a dusty old book. Helping others has a profound way of enriching our own lives. According to research, acts of kindness release endorphins, creating what scientists call the helper's high. It's a little miracle woven into the fabric of our biology that encourages us to connect and empathize. I could feel the rush of those endorphins as I chatted with the sweet woman, learning about her family and her love for baking pies with the apples I had just helped her acquire. For her, it was a simple act of assistance. For me, it was a doorway into a world of connection I had almost overlooked. Little did I know, this would be a pivotal day that would spark a fire within me. As our conversation started to wrap up, an urgent commotion broke out nearby. A young mother was frantically searching for her lost child among the vendors. My heart sank at the sight of her desperation, her shouts intertwining with the laughter and chatter, a stark contrast to the joy of the market. I felt that familiar tug at my heart, the urge to help surge through me once again. Abandoning my earlier conversation, I joined the crowd forming around her, scanning faces and determined to do my part. The small, intimate experience I had just had quickly morphed into a mission of collective goodwill. As we all worked together, strangers becoming allies in the face of worry, I noticed the energy shift. There was a palpable camaraderie that ignited among us as we shouted her name into the air, searching stall after stall. It dawned on me how effortlessly we had come together, different ages, cultures, and backgrounds all unified by a singular purpose. Then, as if the universe had rewarded our efforts, we spotted the little girl at the edge of the market, happily munching on a slice of watermelon, oblivious to the chaos around her. The mother swept her into a hug, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks, and within that moment, I felt a swell of warmth that almost took my breath away. Reflecting on that day later, it struck me how deeply intertwined our happiness is with our willingness to help others. It's easy to think of kindness as a mere duty or an obligation, but the moment we view it as a reason to connect and a permission slip to truly engage with the world, we unlock something profound. I realized then that the joy of helping others isn't just about the benefit it brings to them. It's also about nurturing a part of ourselves that yearns to love and be loved, to belong and be a part of something larger than ourselves. I left the market that day basking in the afterglow of shared joy and community spirit. The warmth of those small moments stayed with me, reminding me that every act of kindness is a ripple. Yes, it starts small, often with just a simple gesture, but it can create waves of connection and transformation that carry far beyond what we can see. And for the rest of the day, as I went about my errands, I resolved to carry that energy with me, to look for opportunities to help, to uplift, and to inspire, because in the heart of giving lies an extraordinary joy that could light up even the darkest corners of our world. Acts of kindness and their impact. It wasn't until I found myself standing in the rain, drenched to the bone, that I truly understood the power of a small act of kindness. I had just missed my bus after a long day at work, and the gray clouds above me seemed to reflect my mood. I shuffled on the sidewalk, half heartedly looking for shelter, when I noticed an elderly woman struggling with her umbrella. She was wrestling against the wind, a frown etched on her face as she leaned forward, determined to maintain her balance. Without thinking much, I rushed over and steadied her umbrella, shielding both of us from the onslaught of rain. It was just a moment, a simple act, yet the look of gratitude on her face was profound. In that instant, I felt the warmth of connection amidst the cold downpour. This experience made me curious about the rippling effects of kindness. According to research, when we perform acts of kindness, we not only uplift those on the receiving end, but we also enrich our own lives. The oxytocin rush, often referred to as the love hormone, from helping others has measurable health benefits. Studies have shown that kindness can lower blood pressure, reduce anxiety, and even boost our immune systems. It's amazing to think that something as simple as holding an umbrella can send waves of positivity throughout the day. Yet, the interesting part is it doesn't just affect our health, it alters our perspective on life itself. We tend to underestimate how our small actions can lead to significant changes. I remember a time at a coffee shop when I decided to pay for the order of the person behind me in line. The barista looked at me, wide-eyed, as I handed over the cash. That simple transaction sparked an unexpected chain reaction. The recipient was so surprised that they not only thanked me profusely, but also paid for the next person's coffee. I watched this ripple effect unfold, each act of kindness bouncing off one another, creating a warmth that enveloped the whole cafe. It reminded me that kindness is contagious. We can spark joy in others, and in turn, they may choose to spread that joy further. However, just when I thought I had grasped the full impact of kindness, life threw me a curveball. A few weeks later, after experiencing a deep personal loss, I found myself retreating into a shell of solitude. It was during this vulnerable time that a friend surprised me with a simple gesture, a home-cooked meal delivered to my doorstep. This act of kindness wasn't monumental, yet it shattered my wall of isolation. It made me feel seen and cared for, allowing me to finally begin the healing process. It struck me then, kindness is not just about grand gestures. Often, it is the small, everyday actions that weave the fabric of human connection. Yet, as I look back, there's a nagging thought that lingers. Are we doing enough? The world is teeming with struggles that often go unnoticed: the lonely, the forgotten, those silently screaming for help. In our busy lives, it's easy to overlook what's right in front of us. It can be daunting to think about changing the world. But what if we started with just one act of kindness each day? Imagine how that could snowball, how we could build a fort of compassion together. Feelings of despair often loom heavy, but coupled with the right intentions, we have the power to coax hope back to life. As I reflect on these moments, it's clear. Acts of kindness create intertwined stories that enrich our lives and the lives of others. They remind us of our shared humanity, our need for connection, and how we can uplift one another, even in the simplest of ways. So next time you find yourself in a difficult situation or even enjoying a moment of peace, remember, the smallest kindness could spark a glimmer of light in someone's darkness. After all, the world could always use a little more warmth, don't you think? Creating a happiness movement. It all started with a simple conversation over coffee with my friend Maya. We were two people sitting in a busy cafe, feeling the weight of the world on our shoulders. As the steam from our mugs curled upwards, I shared with her my frustration about how easy it was for people to dive into negativity. Why aren't we talking about happiness more? I mused, watching the faces of weary strangers pass by our window. That moment sparked a vision that would evolve into something far larger than I had ever anticipated. Days turned into weeks as I started doodling ideas in the margins of my journal. What if we could create a movement? A place where people could come together, celebrate their joys, and share tips on how to cultivate happiness. I did some research and discovered that the science of happiness is not as obscure as one might think. There are proven techniques, from gratitude practices to creative expression, and I felt compelled to put them into action. My enthusiasm was contagious, and soon a few more friends joined in. Our living room became a hub for brainstorming excitement and innovative ideas, and it was there that the happiness movement was born. But we quickly realized that starting a movement isn't as easy as launching a website and expecting others to jump on board. I started reaching out to like minded individuals and organizations, volunteers, wellness coaches, psychologists, anyone who could share insights and lend their passion. Each interaction was a lesson in the challenges we would face. Conversations sparked from excitement to discomfort as we faced the daunting reality of what happiness really meant. What if it was a luxury only a few could afford? What if we couldn't find a universal approach? Those questions began lurking in my mind, adding a knot of tension to my excitement. Yet it was in these moments of uncertainty that I found clarity. I decided to host a small community event to share our vision, an happiness fair, as I whimsically titled it. Armed with vibrant posters and a burning desire to spread joy, my team and I prepared ourselves for the event. I'll never forget the nervous flutter in my stomach as the day approached. The initial hesitation began to dissolve as I watched community members light up with enthusiasm, exchanging stories and laughter. There was a magnetic energy in the air as we built connections and challenged one another to embrace positivity and vulnerability. As the event wrapped up, I stood there in awe, soaking in the overwhelming warmth of the community. We had done it, but in the pit of my stomach, a nagging thought took root. Had we truly made a difference? Was this a fleeting moment, or could it ignite something lasting? The questions loomed larger, draining my exuberance and casting a shadow over my newfound passion. Little did I know that was just the beginning. I felt an urge to delve deeper, to uncover the factors that turn a spark into a lasting flame. The tension of uncertainty wrinkled my brow, yet deep inside I knew we were onto something profound. The following days were a whirlwind of feedback and follow-up meetings. I systematically combed through the data we collected, looking for patterns. What practices resonated? Where did participants feel a disconnect? What was the underlying pull we all craved? Each insight painted a vivid picture of our collective needs. People were yearning for a sense of belonging, connection, and purpose. My heart raced with excitement, combining their voices into a coherent manifesto of joy, a unique recipe for fostering happiness in everyday life. At that moment, I realized the crucial element we had almost overlooked. The movement wasn't merely about spreading positivity, it required genuine engagement and authenticity. This was not just another trend, but rather a lifeline for people striving to navigate their own journeys through an often chaotic world. And yet, as exhilarating as it was to grasp this understanding, shadows lurked. A voice in my mind whispered doubts. What if it was too ambitious? Who are we to think we could shift the paradigm of happiness? As I stared into the mirror, I wrestled with that uncertainty, feeling the weight of these ambitions bearing down on my shoulders. It was then that I decided we needed something bold. What if we could facilitate a challenge, a 30-day journey, cultivating happiness for everyone willing to take part? My heart raced at the thought. Would people embrace it? Would it lead us where I had been hoping? The excitement of the potential began to mix with a bubbling dread as I contemplated the number of eyes that might be watching. Friends? Strangers? I took a deep breath. The idea felt colossal, exhilarating yet terrifying, hanging just out of reach like a star in the night sky. At that moment, our planned happiness movement transcended mere aspirations. It became a beacon of hope, inviting those around us to join a journey of transformation. Chapter 15. Reflections on the Journey. Lessons Learned. There are moments in life that reshuffle our understanding, reshape our beliefs, and redefine our paths. I remember a crisp autumn afternoon when it happened for me. I was sitting in a small cafe, the kind that only a few locals frequented, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee and staring blankly out the window. The golden leaves were falling, swirling in a dance orchestrated by the brisk wind. It was then that I got a text from my best friend, Amy, saying she had finally decided to pack up and move across the country. A spontaneous choice, or so it seemed. Amy had always been the adventurous one among us, but this was different. It felt reckless, even dangerous. As someone who had meticulously planned every aspect of my life, her decision stirred something deep within me. Was I doing life wrong? I'd spent years in a comfortable job that paid the bills, kept me in my cozy little routine, and yet I felt this pervasive emptiness creeping in. I couldn't help but wonder about the lessons I had yet to learn. Maybe this was the universe throwing me a lifeline, a wake-up call to embrace a different kind of living. That evening, I dug through my bookshelf, something I hadn't done in ages. I stumbled upon a dusty copy of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I had read it in college, but had all but forgotten its essence. As I flipped through the pages, I was reminded of the powerful message that the journey itself is where the real treasure lies, not the destination. It was a revelation that tasted sweet with nostalgia, yet sour with regret. How long had I neglected my own dreams, my own personal legend, all in the name of security? The thought clawed at me, igniting a longing I had buried too deep. The days turned into weeks, and Amy's departure was a catalyst I desperately needed. I started going on long walks, allowing my thoughts to swirl around freely, reminiscent of those leaves outside the cafe. Each step brought clarity. I began brainstorming the things I had put off, writing that novel, taking up painting again, and even traveling to places I had only dreamt of visiting. But I also faced some harsh truths. Fear was the ghost that haunted my every endeavor, whispering all that could go wrong, all the ways I could fail. It was a familiar voice, one I thought I had learned to silence, but it roared back with vengeance. Then came a night filled with troubling dreams. I saw faces from my past, moments I had locked away, accompanied by the nagging thought that I was capable of so much more than I was allowing myself to be. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing, the weight of my own inertia resting heavily on my chest. In that moment, I realized that lessons often come wrapped in discomfort. They demand reckoning, and they don't let you hide away. Summoning every ounce of courage, I picked up the phone and called Amy for the first time since her move. The warmth in her voice on the other end felt like an electric jolt. Her enthusiasm for her new adventure was contagious. She was renewing a dormant part of herself, and I desperately wanted to catch that spark. As we spoke, I shared my fears, my dreams, and the overwhelming desire to make a change. To my surprise, she listened intently, interjecting with joyful affirmations that felt like a warm embrace. "Why not visit me?" she suggested. "Let this be the push you need to step outside your comfort zone." It felt both exciting and terrifying, the very definition of growth. Before I knew it, I was making plans to visit, the thought bursting like fireworks in my mind. Yet, in my excitement, I couldn't shake a deeper concern. What if I failed? What if I hesitated at the edge of that leap and couldn't find the courage to jump? With the flight booked, the countdown began. Days turned into a blur of anticipation, and the thrill was mingled with uncertainty. Each thought paraded through my mind, like a puppeteer showcasing all the reasons I could back out. But my heart pounded a steady rhythm. It was urging me forward, daring me to embrace the leap. The night before my trip, I settled into bed, and for the first time in a while, I closed my eyes with hope, not dread. Maybe, just maybe, my journey was only beginning, but I also felt the stirring sensation that I had yet to confront the biggest lesson of all, the fear of my own potential. Gratitude for the process. As I sit on my porch, watching the world buzz around me, I can't help but reflect on the twists and turns of my journey. It feels like every moment leading up to now has built a mosaic of lessons, each piece molding me into who I am today. There's a special kind of magic in recognizing the beauty of the process, and I want to share some thoughts on this, should they resonate with you. Looking back, I remember when I started my career. Each day I faced a mountain of tasks that felt insurmountable. I was eager to reach the summit, but often overlooked the landscape forming around me. The late nights spent poring over documents, the laughter shared with colleagues during coffee breaks, and even the mistakes I made along the way. They all had a purpose. These moments needed to happen. They were threads in a much larger tapestry. Research supports this idea. Psychologists suggest that gratitude enhances our emotional awareness, allowing us to appreciate not just success, but the journey that gets us there. But why talk about gratitude now? Because, dear reader, like any worthwhile endeavor, my journey hasn't been linear. The chaos and uncertainty are part of the beauty, yet they can be uncomfortable. Just last week, faced with a tight deadline, I found myself spiraling into self doubt. Did I have what it takes? Were my skills still relevant? I had to pause and remind myself it's okay to stumble. Each challenge is an opportunity to learn and grow. In that moment of unease, my gratitude grounded me. It allowed me to shift my focus from fear to resilience. By embracing the process, I unlocked a new perspective on what it means to succeed. The journey is as valid as the destination. Yet, the story does not end here. There is tension, a knot that pulls at the fabric of this narrative. As I reflect on my gratitude towards the process, an unsettling thought emerges. What if I had never embraced these challenges? What if I had chosen comfort over growth? Would I have missed out on the richness of life's experiences, the successes baked into the very struggles I feared? This is where I find the pressing urgency to share with you the necessity of cherishing every stage of our personal trails, a lesson I'm still learning, perhaps for the rest of my life. It's an invitation to see every hurdle as a chance to stretch beyond our perceived limits, a chance we must cherish. As shadows stretch across my porch telling tales of the day's end, I hold on to this truth. Gratitude for the process is not just about looking back, it's about moving forward with intention. Each winding path teaches us something profound. Embrace the uncertainty, the laughter, the tears, and even the fights with our inner critics, knowing they are shaping us into who we are meant to be. Let us carry this kind of gratitude into the future, turning up the volume on every lesson, every step. The tension lies in how we respond to those moments. We can choose gratitude, or we can let bitterness seep in. And I certainly hope you'll join me in choosing gratitude. Continuing the happiness journey. As I sat on my worn-out couch, sipping the last dregs of my morning coffee, I couldn't help but reflect on the winding path I had taken toward happiness. It's funny how life throws you curveballs, some of them small and insignificant, while others feel like a punch to the gut. Yet here I was, clutching my coffee mug like a talisman, feeling a flicker of joy as sunlight spilled through the window. I remembered the days when even the sunniest mornings felt shrouded in clouds. Those feelings seemed like distant memories, but they were threads woven deeply into my journey. It all began with that one pivotal moment when I decided that happiness wasn't just a fleeting emotion, it was a pursuit worth my effort. I remember feeling disheartened during my late-night reflections, scrolling through the social media feeds of friends whose lives seemed perfect. I was bombarded with their smiling faces on exotic vacations and glamorous outings, feeling as if every photo reinforced my own sense of inadequacy. It was exhausting, and I knew I had to break free. No longer would I allow others' highlight reels to dictate my self-worth or happiness. So I began to chart the course of my happiness journey, and the first step, a commitment to gratitude. In the past, I had brushed off the idea as cliché or overly simplistic, but when I finally embraced it, the results were transformative. Each morning, I started jotting down 3 things I was thankful for. Simple pleasures like a warm shower, the smell of fresh coffee, or the laughter of a friend. This ritual became my anchor, a reminder that even in the turbulence of life, there existed bright spots waiting to be noticed. Of course, this journey wasn't without its bumps and forks in the road. Just as I began uncovering pockets of joy, life tossed unexpected challenges my way. An unexpected bill here, a loved one facing health issues there. Each obstacle felt like a test of my newfound perspective. Anxiety threatened to seep back in, and I could feel the shadows encroaching. But as I faced these trials, I discovered an important truth. Happiness isn't about the avoidance of pain or the accumulation of pleasure. It's about how we navigate through both. With each setback, I learned to dig deeper into my reservoir of resilience. I recalled a particular winter evening, sitting by the fireplace with my journal open, scribbling through my doubts. I discovered that vulnerability can be a bridge to deeper connections. Sharing my struggles with friends transformed those conversations into havens where support flowed freely, reminding me that I wasn't alone in my journey. I was building a community, one that celebrated not just the triumphs, but also the struggles. And in this shared experience, happiness began to root itself deeper. But the real turning point came unexpectedly on a quiet Saturday afternoon at a local park. I had taken a stroll, eager to catch a breath of fresh air and perhaps stumble upon inspiration. Sitting on a bench, I watched a group of children playing tag, a flurry of laughter and pure joy that flashed me back to my own childhood. In that moment, I realized something pivotal. The capacity for happiness often lies in simplicity. A day spent outdoors, the warmth of the sun, or the feeling of grass beneath my feet were all threads of the tapestry I was weaving with my life. Just as I began to understand this, the universe threw me yet another curveball that shattered the peaceful ambiance. A loud argument erupted nearby. I looked over to see a couple in an intense dispute, their faces flushed with anger. My initial instinct was to turn away, to ignore the discomfort. But then, something stirred within me. Shouldn't we foster empathy as we journey through happiness? I wondered whether their anger was just a snapshot of deeper issues. Suddenly, the contrast between joy and anguish felt stark and vivid. I was left grappling with the realization that happiness thrives not in isolation, but through the connections we forge, even when those connections are messy. And so, as I returned from that park, I felt an itch to dive further into my journey, recognizing that the pursuit of happiness is a continual process. My heart raced with the excitement of further growth, but I also felt trepidation. What if I stumbled into unexpected hardships? What if I failed to keep my momentum? The questions lingered as I stepped back into my life, but this time I didn't shy away from uncertainty. I welcomed it, knowing that every challenge only added depth to my pursuit. And with the sun setting behind me, casting long shadows that danced upon the ground, I resolved to continue my happiness journey, undaunted and eager to see where the road would lead. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of happiness and well-being. By understanding and applying the practices we've discussed, you are taking steps towards creating a life filled with joy, purpose, and resilience. Remember, happiness is not a destination but a continuous journey, one that evolves with each new day. As you move forward, may you embrace the beauty of ordinary moments, nurture meaningful relationships, and find joy in the act of giving. Continue to practice gratitude, live mindfully, and pursue your passions. The journey to happiness is yours to shape, and it begins with the choices you make each day. Thank you for being a part of this journey with Mindful Literary. Let's continue to spread happiness and make the world a brighter place.